Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto and Hinata trained by Jiraiya part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. It had been 3 whole years since he had been here. 3 whole years of wandering around and training with that pervert Chunin Jiraiya. 3 whole years since that fateful day at Valley's End. 3 whole years since he had fought with Sasuke. 3 years he wasn't able to keep his promise to Sakura-chan. Sasuke. The thought of his old rival and best friend seemed to put a gloomy mood over Naruto as he walked through such familiar, and yet unfamiliar, woods to the only place he found acceptance, and yet at the same time, rejection. Konoha. Home. Jiraiya looked over at the blonde young man walking next to him. Cheer up, Naruto. It's been 3 years since you've been back. I thought you'd be excited about seeing everyone and showing off how much stronger you've become. Naruto shook himself out of his foreboding thoughts. Nah, I'm fine, Ero-senin. Just thinking up a way that I can show everyone how badass I am now. The truth was, he really was excited about coming back and seeing all the people he held so dear to him. It had been too long since he had seen the people that he considered his friends. After a few more minutes of walking, they came to the main gate of the hidden village of the Leaf. Just like I remembered it, thought Naruto. His excitement was growing with each step they took toward the towering gates. 2 guards from the top of the wall jumped down to inspect the 2 road-worn travelers. Who goes there? And what is your business in the hidden village of the Leaf? Naruto stood dumbfounded at what he just heard. What? What the hell are you talking about? Who am I? I'm Uzumaki Naruto, the future Hokage of Konoha. That's who I am. Jiraiya gave an apologetic shrug towards the 2 guards. Sorry guys, I guess he expected everyone to recognize him, even though he's been gone for 3 years. Jiraiya said this last part while giving Naruto a warning glance. Naruto reluctantly backed off, but still sniffed, and turned his back on the 2 guards. One of the guards' eyes lit up with recognition. Ha 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 ha. It is him. Who could forget Konoha's loudest ninja? I remember watching him at the Chunin exams, when he beat Hokage Neji. That was an awesome fight. The other guard simply nodded. You're right, it is him. He turned to the white-haired man, who was actually shorter than the blonde ninja standing next to him. Then you must be Jiraiya, the Toad Sannin. Welcome back to Konoha. You are to report directly to Hokage-sama. She's been expecting you. And with that, the 2 gate guards gave a signal and the twin gates cranked slowly open. As Naruto and Jiraiya strode by and into the village, one of the gate guards turned to his companion. I didn't know if it was him or not. Last I remembered, Uzumaki was one of the shortest ninjas around. Now he's one of the tallest I've seen. His companion merely nodded. He sure has grown in the past 3 years. As they passed through the gate, they made their way directly to the Hokage's office, near the center of the village. As they walked by houses and stores, people stopped and stared at the 6-foot-plus ninja that was Naruto. Hey Ero-senin, why is everyone staring at me? Jiraiya had to crane his neck to look at Naruto's face. Probably because they recognize you and are happy that you're back. Jiraiya gave one of his grins. Maybe some girls think you're hot or something. Ha ha. Naruto could only roll his eyes. Pervert, all he ever thinks about are girls. Come on, let's go see Oba-chan. As they approached the center of the village and the Godame's office, Naruto noticed something was different, but couldn't quite place it. Then it him, holy shit, they got Oba-chan's mug up on the cliff. Look, Jiraiya followed Naruto's pointing finger. Looks like they do. Now I can look at her all the time. Jiraiya suddenly went crashing to the ground as Naruto knocked him on the top of the head. An occurrence that the Toad Sannin had become rather accustomed to. Pervert Sannin. Naruto wondered if the man ever stopped. Tsunade was reading a report on how many missions there were that needed to be completed. It wasn't looking good. 3 years and we still don't have enough ninja to keep up with the missions. Tsunade moaned and lightly banged her forehead on her desk. There was a knock at the door, and none other than Hatake Kakashi stuck his head into the room. Sorry for disturbing your thinking, Hokage-sama, but I just returned from my mission, which was a success, and look who I found standing in the waiting room. Kakashi pushed the door open the rest of the way to reveal Naruto and Jiraiya standing in the doorway. Tsunade's face lit up in one of her very few smiles. Naruto! You've returned! And you've gotten so big! Wow! Tsunade walked around her desk and had to reach up to put her hands on the young man's shoulders. My. Haven't you grown up? Naruto grinned and scratched the back of his head. Thanks Oba-chan. I miss seeing you too, and I miss you too. Jiraiya piped up, smiling wide. Tsunade nodded curtly at her former teammate. Glad you're not dead yet either, Jiraiya. She then turned away from the 2, gesturing towards a couple of chairs. Sit, and Kakashi, thank you for bringing these 2. I'll document your mission as complete. As Kakashi closed the door behind him, Tsunade turned to the 2 sitting across from her. I trust you kept Naruto out of trouble, Jiraiya? And Naruto, you have improved very much from what I read in Jiraiya's reports. Naruto grinned. Yeah, it was really great. Well, Ero-senin can be a pretty tough sensei. But it was all worth it. I'm loads stronger now. And as if to emphasize the fact, Naruto flexed both of his arms in a childish fashion. Tsunade smiled in exasperation. He hasn't changed much, but she had to admit though, the kid was ripped. His body had grown amazingly fast over the 3 short years that he had been gone, and Jiraiya had apparently put him through a large amount of physical training. He wasn't overly muscular like a bodybuilder, but she had no doubt that every muscle under his clothes was defined, hard and powerful. Tsunade gave a warm smile towards the blue-eyed blonde. And how were your travels and experiences with Jiraiya? Tsunade gave a hard stare towards Jiraiya. Jiraiya gulped audibly, catching the hidden meaning of Tsunade's words. Naruto on the other hand just laughed. If you're wondering if I'm still a virgin, don't worry. It was usually up to me to save Jiraiya from certain death when he got caught in the women's showers. Naruto chuckled. Besides, I don't need a girlfriend. I'm perfectly fine. Tsunade, however, relieved as she was at the news that Jiraiya's habits seemed to have a reverse effect on Naruto, could see that he wasn't fine. Naruto was almost 17. He probably couldn't stop thinking about girls even though he wouldn't admit it. And after such a hard past and having difficulty making friends, he was probably depressed that he had never had the affections of someone other than the few adults who understood and respected him. She pitied him at the moment, even though she knew it wasn't what he wanted. Oh well, with a body and looks like that, he won't be finding it hard to find a date now that he's back in civilization. Tsunade erased her worries and focused on the task at hand. Alright, Naruto, before I dismiss you, I wish to give you the news that you are to participate in the upcoming Chunin exam in the next 7 days. Since you are the only one of your class who isn't at least a Chunin yet. Naruto's grin diminished somewhat. Hee, so I am the only genin in my class then? Tsunade smiled. You and Hyuga Hinata. Naruto started in surprise. Huh? Hinata-chan isn't a Chunin yet? How come? Tsunade sighed. Because the year that you left, when the Chunin exam was held for the second time, Hinata and her team did fine. Hinata lost her fight in the third part of the exam though, and wasn't elected to become a Chunin. Almost all the other genin though, including her teammates, Kiba and Shino, achieved Chunin rank. She hasn't tried again since. Naruto stared wide-eyed. Huh? That isn't like Hinata-chan at all. She might be a little quiet but she's tough, I know. I'd have thought she would have gone back as soon as possible for another try. Naruto scratched his head in a confused manner. Tsunade could only smile inwardly. The girl was in love with him, and no matter how much he had matured he still hadn't figured it out. She knew why Hinata didn't go back and try. She only tried because of Naruto having confidence in her. She didn't want to lose his confidence. An idea bloomed in Tsunade's head like a flower opening up to the sun. You know, Naruto, Hinata would probably try again if you gave her some of your renowned encouragement, maybe? And if she knew that her #1 loudest fan was going to be there as well. Tsunade raised questioning eyebrows at the young man sitting across from her. Naruto's face instantly lit up. Yeah. Of course she'll try again if she knows I'm going to be there to root her on. Hey. Maybe we'll be on teams. Then no one would stop us. She's sure to make Chunin this time around. I'll make sure of it. Naruto jumped out of his chair and strode to the door. Matter of fact, we only got 7 days. I'll convince her to go to the exam today. That way we can start training right away. Tsunade jumped up and yelled, Naruto, think fast. As she threw something at him. Naruto smoothly caught it just before it hit him in the temple. Huh? What are these, Oba-chan? He was holding a ring of keys in his hand. Tsunade smirked. Those are the keys to your new house. The place you were living in was a dump, so I found a new place that hasn't been inhabited for a few years now. I had your stuff moved over there. Kakashi will show you the way. Naruto smiled and waved at his one-time sensei and the Godane. Thanks, Oba-chan. See ya, Ero-sanin. And with that he walked out the door. Jiraiya turned back to Tsunade. You didn't, he said in disbelief. Tsunade gave a small mischievous smile. It is his inheritance after all. His brother would have wanted him to have it. Besides, he's 16, he's old enough now to own it. Jiraiya gave a somber laugh. Yeah, his entire family would have wanted him to have it. A few moments of silence passed before he spoke up again. So? How does the search for the Uchiha kid, Orochimaru, and the Akatsuki go? Tsunade gave a deep and remorseful sigh. We don't know what Orochimaru is up to right now, other than the fact that he has 3 sound neens in the upcoming Chunin exam. And of the Akatsuki, all we know is that they're still searching for Naruto. You probably know more than us, Jiraiya. Jiraiya raised his eyebrows in a mildly interested manner. Not at all actually, the boys' training took up almost all of my time. I hardly had enough time to finish the sequel to the Come Come Paradise series. And what of the Uchiha boy? You didn't tell me about the situation with that. Tsunade could only let out another sigh. We've abandoned the search for him. Jiraiya's eyebrows rose even more. Why? Naruto won't be happy about this, you know that, right? Tsunade could only stare at her desk. I know, Sakura didn't take it very well when I told her either. I would tell Naruto, but he'll probably hear it from her before he sees me again. It's pointless to go after him now though. I gave Naruto to you for 3 years in order to keep him from trying to kill himself trying to find Uchiha, and of course to keep him from Itachi. But 3 years wasn't enough time for us, we couldn't find him, and now 3 years have passed and he hasn't returned. He's probably already Orochimaru's vessel now, and if not, he's so lost in the darkness I don't even think Naruto can bring him back. A single tear escaped Tsunade's eye. I wish I could make it up to Naruto and Sakura somehow, but all I can do now is protect him from Itachi. That's why I'm sending him to the treehouse, Jiraiya. Only you and I know where it is. I'm going to send a small group of bodyguards. He'll stay up there until we've dealt with Itachi and the rest of the Akatsuki. Tsunade sighed and rested her chin on her palms. I plan on telling him after the Chunin exam. I should have a team assembled by then to protect him. He won't like it, but he'll have to deal with it. Tsunade was trying to sound resolute in her decision, but she couldn't help but let the guilt creep into her voice. Jiraiya nodded solemnly. I agree, that's a good idea, Tsunade. You're doing a great job at keeping Naruto safe. Then she completely broke down, sobbing into her hands. Oh Jiraiya. I've been such a screw-up. It's been 3 years already, and we still don't have enough ninja to keep up with the missions, and I've completely failed Naruto and Sakura. I wasn't able to save Sasuke for them. She continued to sob into her hands, tears leaking through her fingers. Jiraiya was at a loss and completely dumbfounded. Tsunade cried so rarely that he didn't remember the last time he had seen her cry. Maybe he never had. Not to mention the fact that tears were his one and only true weakness, even more so than beautiful women. Jiraiya got up slowly and walked around the desk and started to put his arm around his old teammate in an attempt to comfort her when out of nowhere a hand grabbed him by the throat and pulled him to eye level with Tsunade. If you even think about touching me in any way that could be deemed perverted, I'll knock you from here into tomorrow, said Tsunade through sobs and teary eyes. Never crossed my mind, squeaked Jiraiya. And with that, Tsunade threw herself against Jiraiya and continued to sob out all the frustration she had been keeping bottled up for the past 3 years into her teammate's chest as he held her with his arms and waited patiently for her to cry it all out. Kakashi and Naruto had just reached his new house. This can't be it. Oba-chan said, a house. Not a freaking castle. Naruto was waving his hands at Kakashi, attempting to convince him that this wasn't the right place. Kakashi gave one of his melodramatic sighs and rolled his eyes. It's the right address, Naruto. I don't know what you're complaining about anyway. Isn't it big enough? Naruto stopped his yelling. Well, yeah, it's big enough. It's just really big. It was true. It wasn't just a house. It was an old abandoned clan house, almost as large as the Hyuga's clan house. There must have been over 100 bedrooms. That didn't include guest rooms, bathrooms, living rooms, the kitchen, the basement, the storage house, or the grounds for that matter. It was mostly single story, but the main building was definitely at least 3 stories high. Kakashi chuckled. Well, just imagine the huge parties and raves you could have here. And with that he left Naruto standing at the front gate. Naruto just stood there for an hour, just looking at the complex from outside of the grounds before he went up to the double gate and pulled out his key, put a rather large iron key into the padlock on the gate. He turned the key slowly, only half hoping, then click. The padlock opened and the gate swung inward, hardly making a sound. Naruto grinned and walked up to the main building and opened the door with what was apparently the main house key, an elaborate key made of solid brass with a red spiral done in red on the handle. His day was getting better and better. He had come back to Konoha. He was entered in the upcoming Chunin exams, and now he had a giant castle-sized house all to himself. And it was still only 9 a.m. in the morning. He was having such a wonderful dream. His opponent had been caught in a trap that he couldn't get out of. His opponent's king couldn't move anywhere due to his strategically placed pieces. I've won, he thought amusingly and with just a touch of excitement. And just as he was about to place his rook and declare checkmate, Shikamaru! Chuji! Came a high, screaming voice, accompanied with intense pounding on a distant door. Wake up! I've got something to tell you. With that he heard a click and a door slam open and shut. Shikamaru slowly opened his eyes, waking up just before his intended chess dream victory. How can that woman be awake? They had just returned from a search and rescue mission that involved a kidnapped village lord and an angry gang boss, and he had just finally finished his report to Hokage-sama and fallen asleep. He turned over and noticed the light coming through the window blinds. So I did get some sleep. Then he noticed his clock. It was 9 a.m. He had only gotten 5 hours of sleep. Across from him and closer to the window slept the large and softly rumbling form of Chuji, his teammate, roommate, and best friend. He was still sleeping, oblivious to the shrieking blonde that was now marching up the stairs to their apartment room. Shikamaru envied him. Chuji, wake up, Shikamaru said softly. For some reason Chuji would wake up if he said his name in a normal tone of voice. He would not wake up, however, to any amount of ice water poured over his head. Shikamaru knew, he had tried it before to no avail. Huh? Why? Chuji slowly sat up, rubbing at his sleep-filled eyes. Shikamaru? Chuji began to yawn and stuck his hand over his mouth. Why you wake me up for? Shikamaru rolled his eyes and got out of bed. He was still dressed in his customary fishnet shirt, but he had left his Chunin vest hanging on his bedpost. Just listen. There came a pounding on their door and another high-pitched yell. Guys! Wake up! I've got some really awesome news. Shikamaru wondered why the door didn't splinter from the force of her yelling. Chuji rolled his eyes as well. He had black bags under his eyes, as did Shikamaru, he noticed. They had both stayed up till 4 in the morning finishing their mission report to the Hokage in hopes of a day of simply sleeping and lounging about in bed. Ino had said she had important business to take care of and was able to skip out on helping with the report. Does she know the meaning of the word quiet? Or maybe even shut up? There came a pause at the door. I heard that, Chuji. There was a warning tone in the voice. Chuji leaned towards Shikamaru and whispered, "At least she's not breaking anyone's eardrums now." Shikamaru could only grin, for at that moment what appeared to be a storm of blonde hair swept into the room and started pummeling Chuji's skull. Shikamaru sighed and waited for the beating to finish. So troublesome. After what appeared to be a blonde fury beating the crap out of poor Chuji, Shikamaru spoke up, "What is it you got to tell us, Ino?" Ino turned around to face Shikamaru, leaving a bruised and battered Chuji lying dazed on the bed. She had grown out her hair again after her fight with Sakura. It was once again the long ponytail that reached the top of her ankles. She had filled out as well, growing a considerable bosom and well-rounded hips. Many men had asked her out on dates, but she had politely, and sometimes not so politely, refused them for 3 years straight. Shikamaru sighed. Sometimes it was so obvious that she was in love with Chuji that he couldn't figure out how his blocky friend didn't seem to notice at all. And Chuji had gotten blocky all right. He was no longer the chubby boy who ate food all the time. He was still very broad and wide, but was now a block of solid muscle who happened to eat food all the time. Ino would sit out during their group training, saying she had to take a rest. Shikamaru knew it was because she just wanted to watch Chuji, which she did, accompanied with blushing cheeks, starry eyes and a lot of sighing. Ino was not usually one to be shy, but when it came to Chuji she just couldn't bring herself to tell him her feelings. Shikamaru had heard that she had even taken a 6-month class in cooking. Shikamaru sighed again. He figured if Ino kept this up, which she had for 3 years straight and with no sign of slowing down, they would get together eventually. So he merely grinned from the sidelines watching their drama unfold like a chess game. Chuji's almost as bad as Naruto was with Hinata. Shikamaru returned from his thoughts and looked at the excited young woman that was Ino. She was literally bouncing on her toes in overexcitement. "What is it, Ino? You woke us up." Ino stopped her bouncing and frowned at Shikamaru. She had to look up to do so though. Unlike Chuji who had gotten wider, Shikamaru had gotten taller, shooting up like a beanstalk. He was even taller than his dad, and one of the tallest jounin in the village. "I know. But wait until you hear what Tsunade-sama told me." Shikamaru crossed his arms and waited patiently for the climatic response. "Naruto's come back. And he's staying in that old clan house that they've been wanting to tear down for years." She positively shrieked it. Shikamaru's eyes widened in surprise. He had forgotten Naruto was supposed to be back this year. Chuji sat up from his bed, still swaying slightly from the pounding that his skull had received. "Naruto's come back? That is awesome." Ino literally glowed from the compliment unknowingly given to her from Chuji. Of course Chuji didn't give any sign of noticing. "Let me guess. You came up here to tell us this because you want us to go see him with you, right?" Even though Shikamaru would prefer sleep, he wouldn't mind seeing his one-time teammate again. Ino gave one of her flashy smiles that usually caused most men to get down on their hand and knees and crawl towards her drooling like dogs. It had no effect on either of the young men. "Actually, we're going shopping first. We need to get him some homecoming gifts. Meet me back here in 2 hours, and you better have your gifts." With that she sauntered expertly out of the room, exposing her swaying rear for Chuji to see. Chuji's only response was to raise his eyebrows slightly in mild interest, then turn to his friend with a weak smile. "I guess you and I are going shopping then, huh?" Shikamaru could only shake his head from side to side in an exasperated manner. Troublesome. Sakura sat in one of the blue seats with her back hunched, and her chin resting on the palms of her hands. The seats were cushioned, but her butt was starting to get sore. Across the waiting room, facing her, lounged Kiba. In his often-seen dog fur parka. This one had white fur on it though, and he usually wore it open now, revealing the chestplate that he wore underneath. At Kiba's feet, laying with his giant head in his oversized paws, was Akamaru, no longer the small puppy that he once was, but now a rather large white-furred mutt, who, when not fighting, enjoyed tackling anyone in sight and licking their faces to death. Kiba had grown too. He was bigger of course, but the most noticeable difference was his hair, which was now a dark shaggy mane that reached past his shoulders. It could go without saying that he had no reason to wear his parka hood anymore. Sakura had hardly changed at all though, at least in dress she still wore the same red dress and black shorts, with some minor alterations in design, suggested by Ino. Plus she wore black gloves now almost at all times. The gloves were padded and especially made to withstand impact, so that she could perform her earth-shattering taijutsu techniques that Tsunade-sensei had taught her. She had filled out as well though, not as much as she would have liked however. She couldn't help but notice how many men happened to ignore her and stare at Ino's chest as they walked by. Unlike Ino however, she had kept her hair short around the jawline, and kept out of her face with her forehead protector that always sat on top of her head. They were both waiting for Shino to come out of the Hokage's office and finish handing in their mission report, so that they could get back to their apartment and catch some shut-eye. They had just returned from hunting down a runaway genin and returning him to Konoha custody. Finally the door opened and out came the intimidating figure of Shino. He was taller than Kiba and he now wore a black trench coat that reached his ankles and of course had a collar so high it hid half his face. He still wore the black glasses that hid his eyes though. Sakura could also see that he was growing a mustache, so that he was beginning to resemble his father. "Sakura, Hokage-sama wishes to have a word with you." Sakura got up nervously and entered the Hokage's office. She could never tell what emotion Shino was feeling since he always spoke in a soft monotone. so she didn't know whether she was getting a praise or whether she was on thin ice. She softly closed the door behind her. Hokage-sama? Sakura could see the woman that was the leader of their village sitting behind her desk going through a stack of papers, chewing on the end of a pen and frowning in concentration. She looked like she was in her mid to late 20s, not her mid-50s like she should have appeared. The woman sitting behind the desk looked up to see the pink-haired girl standing nervously in front of the office door. Sit down, Sakura, and stop fidgeting, will you? You think I called you in here to yell at you? Sakura let out the breath she was holding in apparent relief. The temperamental Hokage wasn't going to give her one of her infamous shouting marathons. Of course, now that Sakura thought about it, she had no idea what she could have done to earn such a reprimand from the Hokage. What did you want to see me for, Tsunade-sensei? Tsunade set the papers she was working on to the side and rested her chin on her hands. I have some news to give you, Sakura. Your old teammate Naruto just returned from his training trip with Jiraiya about 2 hours ago. Tsunade smiled at the shocked expression on her pupil's face. Sakura jumped out of her chair in excitement, suppressing a girlish squeal. Naruto is back. Where the hell is he? I gotta go see him. Sakura was nearly exploding with almost uncontained energy. Naruto. She hadn't seen him since he was in the hospital, injured from his battle with Sasuke-kun. They had grown to become close friends then, both caring and worried for Sasuke. Tsunade smiled, remembering her excitement at seeing the young man return unharmed. She had missed him too. But Sakura caught a warning glance in Tsunade's eye and instantly calmed down. What is it, Tsunade-sensei? Tsunade took a deep breath, causing her bosom to stretch against her shirt, prepping herself for what she had to tell her student. Sakura, under any circumstances you cannot tell Naruto about us aborting the search for Sasuke. Sakura felt a well of anger begin to rise up. She still hadn't fully forgiven her sensei for not only abandoning the search for her Sasuke-kun, but for forbidding her of even trying to find him. And why not? Sakura almost spat the words between gritted teeth. Tsunade sighed. She understood Sakura's anger at her. Hell, she was angry at herself for doing it, but it was something that had to be done. You can still tell him, but you have to wait for a week or so, after the Chunin exams. I've entered Naruto, and I don't need him getting worried, depressed, angry, over-anxious, or all of the above while he's trying to focus on life and death situations during the exam. Do you understand, Sakura? You can still tell him, but you have to wait a bit. Tsunade leaned back in her chair and waited for her message to sink in. It took several minutes of Sakura silently fuming before she started to see the reasoning behind Tsunade's words. She sighed, almost letting go of all the anger and frustration she had built up, almost. I guess I can wait a bit. But I don't have to like it or pretend I do, and I'm telling him right after the exam, okay? Tsunade breathed a sigh of relief. Sakura had picked up her habit of loud yelling and swinging punches when she got angry. She didn't want to have to knock some control into her best student if she got out of hand. Promise? Sakura bit her lower lip and chewed for a moment before answering. Promise, she said grudgingly. I still don't have to like it though. Tsunade smiled and nodded her head. I didn't expect you to. Now go. I think there's a certain blonde, messy-haired ninja you've been waiting to see. She was glad to see Sakura smile warmly and walk out of the office. At least she didn't slam the door. That was a good sign. Sakura re-entered the waiting room to see Shino and Kiba speaking to each other. Akamaru gave a deep bark when she came out of the office, causing Kiba to look up and smile wolfishly at Sakura. Shino just got done telling me about Naruto getting back. Come on, I can't wait to see the little twerp. Naruto was finding that having a castle-sized house to himself wasn't all it was cracked up to be. He had found his room on the 3rd floor of the main building. It was a big room, with its own bathroom that had a swimming pool-sized bathtub/shower, and even its own sauna. The bed was a huge 4-poster made of solid oak, and with silk sheets. There was also a couch, a big screen TV, and a mini kitchen, complete with a full-sized refrigerator. All of his things were in the room, including changes of his old orange jacket and pants that he no longer fit into, and of course a cabinet stocked full of ramen bowls and shin cups. After he dropped off his stuff, he decided to do a little exploring of the premises. The 2nd floor of the main building had 2 honorary guest bedrooms, complete with everything the master bedroom had, except everything was on smaller scale and there wasn't a sauna. The entire 1st floor was one big entry room that could be used as a living room. Here everyone came from the front lawn through the entryway and into the rest of the complex behind the main tower. From the outside one could see that the walls of the entire house were white stucco and the roofs were an emerald-colored tile. The front lawn was longer than it was wide, with a cobblestone walkway that led up to the solid oak door of the main tower. Behind the tower it opened up into a square courtyard that was about 100 feet on each side and surrounded by a covered boardwalk. The courtyard had a sand floor with concrete walkways weaving through it, a little stream that ran from one side to the other, and even a little bridge over the mini river. And of course a few trees, a couple of boulders and some bushes and flowers to finish off the pretty scene. From the boardwalk one could enter other rooms, including the kitchen and dining room which was on the other side of the main tower, and into other sections of the house complex. Naruto found that the only rooms that were cleaned were the ones in the main tower. Almost every other room in the tower was empty and dusty. The kitchen was devoid of any cooking materials, and the dining room lacked even a table. Of course Naruto figured the table would have to be several yards long in order to fill the narrow room. He could tell he was only expected to live in the main tower. He had everything he needed there. This place was apparently meant for an extensive family, and he was the only one here. He suddenly felt very alone while standing in one of the empty rooms, watching the dust float through the sunrays. He had no family. He may have never had a family. For all he knew, he was the QB reborn as a child. He quickly rubbed tears from his eyes with the palms of his eyes. He wasn't going to cry about this. He cried enough over it already. He quickly went back to his room, skipping over the other unopened rooms, and began to unpack his things with an unnatural vigor, as if he wanted to feel at home as quickly as possible. He was just finishing up putting away clothes that would fit him and putting up all the baubles he had gotten on his travels with Jiraiya, when the house bell rang. It came from a small speaker up on the wall. He had noticed them in most of the rooms he had gone into. It made a small chiming sound that was peaceful, and yet at the same time slightly annoying. Naruto quickly pulled on an orange t-shirt and galloped down the stairs. He had been trying to see if his old orange jackets would fit him, only to end up causing the one he tried on to rip down the back as if he was transforming into the Hulk. I guess I've gotten a little bigger since I've worn my old clothes. When Naruto finally reached the front door, the doorbell had already rang twice more. Coming. Once he finally opened the door, he was quickly picked off the ground and treated to a rib-crushing hug. Naruto-san. Naruto was being crushed by what appeared to be someone with black hair and wearing a green leotard. Lee-san, you're crushing me. Naruto was instantly put down. Many apologies, Naruto-san. But I was just so happy to hear of your return to our homeland. Naruto looked up from his sitting position at the taijutsu master that had saved him from the psychopathic Kimimaro. Rock Lee. He hadn't changed much, other than the fact he had gotten taller, and was apparently more toned. He still wore the same green suit and orange stockings complete with bandaged arms. But now he wore a Chunin vest left unzipped, just like his sensei Mato guy. Many greetings, Naruto-san. I heard rumor of your return and quickly went to see the Hokage and ask of your whereabouts. Then I ran all the way here to see you as soon as possible. Lee smiled and struck his nice guy pose. Naruto could only gape at the amount of energy Lee-san projected. He seemed to be the only person who beat Naruto in stamina and hard work. Hey Lee-san. Naruto stood up and grasped Lee's hand in a vigorous handshake. That ended up with Naruto massaging his hand, wondering how many bones were broken. It's good to see you, to Lee-san. Lee-san smiled wider. Many thanks, comrade. I have brought you, what do they call it? A homecoming gift? Lee-san produced from his vest a small, poorly wrapped package and handed it to Naruto. Naruto examined the present, which was wrapped in green wrapping paper, which he noticed matched Lee's ninja outfit. Lee, you shouldn't have. Lee let out a jovial laugh. Nonsense, my friend. It was my pleasure. Naruto examined the package a bit more before opening it. Inside was a box, and when he opened it he could see that inside lay 2 neatly folded strips of white cloth. Naruto pulled both out. Each strip was about 4 feet long. What are they? Lee held up his arms and pointed at the white bandages wrapped around his arms and smiled. Try them on, Naruto-san. I wish to see how you look in them. Naruto shrugged and began to wrap them around his arms. When he was done he didn't know what to do exactly, so he struck a nice guy pose and smiled. Lee smiled and struck his own nice guy pose. Aha! Like a true warrior, Naruto-san. You and I, we shall keep the spring of youth alive. Naruto could only laugh good-heartedly. The bandages were quite comfortable actually. He noticed Lee-san was grinning wider and wider and nearly bouncing on his toes from excitement. What is it, Lee-san? Naruto was quickly suspicious of the bouncing knee. As if he was waiting for that exact question, Lee burst out. You are going to love this part, Naruto-san. Naruto could only frown in confusion. Please, my friend, try gathering your chakra into your armbands. Trust me, you will like this. Naruto continued to frown and began to gather a little bit of chakra into the arm bandages. Okay, now what? Lee-san smiled. Release it. Naruto scowled. What? But Lee was persistent. Just release it. Naruto did as he was asked, and was instantly shocked at what he saw. The chakra in his armbands should have dissipated after releasing it, but instead the chakra was still there in the armbands, swirling around, visible to his eyes. Whoa! Cool, they store chakra. Lee-san smiled his widest. Yes, they do. They are just like mine. You can store an equivalent amount of chakra in your armbands equal to how much you normally have fully rested, and you can save it for later at any time. I use mine for taijutsu, but you can use it for ninjutsu and genjutsu as well. Naruto was now grinning. Wow. Lee, these are awesome. Thanks. No problem, my friend. The pleasure is all mine. Then Lee got a mischievous glint in his eye. Would you like to try them out, Naruto-san? A friendly one-on-one match maybe? Naruto grinned with just as much mischief. He was really looking forward to seeing how good Lee's taijutsu had gotten. Sure, come on out back. I got this big-ass courtyard out back we can spar in. Shikamaru, Chuji and Ino were on their way to Naruto's house. Ino was walking exceptionally close to Chuji, who of course didn't seem to notice the attention. Shikamaru looked at the surrounding buildings. Are you sure this the right way, Ino? They were headed towards the direction where the Hyuga and former Uchiha clan houses were located. Ino glared at Shikamaru. Of course this the right way, you baka. I would never get us lost. Chuji snorted around a mouthful of chips. You got us lost in that forest when we were running away from that gang boss and his thugs, and while we were trying to get the village lord to safety. He then promptly stuffed another handful of chips into his mouth. Ino began to pout. That wasn't my fault, Chuji. It was that stupid map the village folk gave us. Shikamaru sighed. Let's just find his house, give him our gifts and get back to bed. I really need to catch up on some sleep. He had bags under his eyes that were probably visible from 100 yards. Shikamaru had in his hand a book on how to master chess and your opponent. It was his gift to Naruto. Ino looked at it and sniffed. You know he'll never read that, right? Naruto can't possibly be interested in anything that has to do with patience and actual thought process. Shikamaru simply shrugged. If he doesn't, oh well, if he does then maybe it will improve that part about patience and thought process. What about you? You know he's going to kill that little green root you got him, right? Ino turned pink in the face. She was carrying a clay pot with what appeared to be a green stalk with a closed bud sitting atop it. Chuji examined it closely for a moment. It doesn't look very impressive. Ino wilted under Chuji's words. It's one of my mother's creations. She says it only blooms on a special occasion. She wouldn't tell me what it was. She just said it would be perfect for Naruto. Chuji looked up from the sorry excuse of a plant. Your mom made it? Ino instantly brightened at the chance to explain to Chuji how her mother was able to design her own breed of flowers by using chakra. After she had finished the explanation and leaving a highly confused Chuji, she decided to comment on his present. Your present was probably the best choice for him, Chuji. Chuji was carrying a large box in both arms. On the front it said in big words, make your own homemade ramen. Chuji shrugged. Yeah, I know he's obsessed with ramen, so I figured he'd like this. Shikamaru shook his head. Funny how both Chuji's and Naruto's interests ran so close together. They hadn't walked much farther when they heard a deep barking from behind them. Hey! Ino Pig, wait up. Ino spun around and was embraced by her best pink-haired friend. Are you guys going to see Naruto too? Sakura asked. Ino nodded and showed her gift. We got him homecoming gifts. What about you guys? Kiba grinned mischievously and squatted down to pet his wolf-sized dog. Akamaru here has got a big slobbery kiss for our sorely missed Naruto-kun, don't we, Akamaru? Akamaru answered with a deep bark in agreement. Shino displayed a glass case that was filled with pinned butterflies, some so colorful they resembled rainbows. I went into the woods and gathered these for Naruto. He can hang it on his wall. Ino google-eyed the butterflies. They're so colorful. I didn't even know some of these existed here in Konoha. Ino then turned to Sakura. And what did you get our number one short and loud ninja? Sakura looked at Ino with knowing smile. That's for me to know, and you find out, Ino Pig. Ino grinned wickedly. Oh, forehead girl got Naruto some smoochy I think. Sakura blushed at the suggestion. No, I didn't. It's just something that both of us find some importance in. You wouldn't understand. And with that she stuck her nose in the air and strode past Ino towards Naruto's house. The others followed behind, sniggering amongst themselves. Raisin Gan! Naruto slammed the whirling vortex of energy into the boulder, completely demolishing it. Lee-san had just been standing there a split second ago. Shit, he has really gotten faster. Naruto heard the Taijutsu master's voice behind him. Aha! Not bad, Naruto-san, but you'll have to be faster than that if you wish to hit me. With that, Rock Lee charged Naruto and performed a sweep kick with his right leg. Naruto easily dodged it by ducking low, but Lee kept spinning and brought his foot back around for a second kick. It was so fast that Naruto didn't have time to even block. Lee's foot connected with Naruto's face and sent him skidding into a tree about 20 feet away. That was the third time Lee had sent Naruto flying. Naruto got up quickly, on the lookout for any follow-up attacks. I am impressed, Naruto-san. You stand up when many would fall with such hits. Naruto merely grinned. He was having the time of his life. Lee-san grinned too and charged again. Halfway to Naruto he suddenly seemed to become blurry, and then disappeared from sight. Behind me. But when Naruto turned to look, there was only a blur of what was Lee-san. In front of you, my friend. As Naruto turned, he found another foot connecting with his face. Naruto slowly got up again. His face was starting to get sore. Fine, I've got a couple of tricks up my sleeve to slow him down. Lee charged again. But this time Naruto was ready. He had gathered as much chakra that he could hold in the center of his body, and Lee was almost on him. He did something that would make Hyuga and Neji proud. He released all of the energy in a blast that emanated from every part of his body. Lee-san was in the air up above Naruto when the blast hit. He was now trying to force his way through the swirling vortex with his fist, just as Naruto had hoped. Naruto quickly did some hand seals and yelled Taiju no Jutsu, hand shackle technique. The swirling vortex, like a snake, wrapped itself around Lee-san's fist. The other end was attached to Naruto's hand. Naruto grinned devilishly up at Lee-san. Lee gulped audibly. Naruto started to swing Lee-san around and around in a big circle as if getting ready for a hammer throw. Lee-san was struggling against the bond and trying to get back to the ground, but the bond of chakra held and Lee-san was too high up in the air to reach the ground. The spinning started to get faster and faster until Naruto was swinging so fast that he was leaning back balanced on one heel, using Lee-san's weight to keep him balanced and spinning. And then he released Lee-san when he thought he couldn't go any faster, sending him hurtling towards a group of people who were standing at the entrance of the courtyard. Chuji stepped in front of everyone and yelled Baika no Jutsu. causing him to grow into a 20-foot wide ball of muscle and fat, just in time to catch the flying rock Lee from crashing into anyone. Lee collided with Chuji's padded chest, causing a shock wave to erupt and kick up the sand on the courtyard floor. UMPF! Grunted Chuji, eyes going wide. Rock Lee emerged from the cradle of Chuji's chest and landed on the ground, trying to stand and falling to his knees, swaying from side to side with intense dizziness and motion sickness. Chuji transformed back to normal and held his chest. Ow! Man, that hurt. What the hell were you doing, Lee? Ino shrieked and ran over to Chuji and began to rub his chest for him. Chuji didn't seem to notice. Again, Lee stood up on wobbly legs, still swaying from being spun around so much. Naruto-san, Lee stuck his thumb behind him, and he pointed at himself. We're just having a friendly match to see how strong we had gotten. Lee giggled. It apparently got a little out of hand. Lee-san! Shrieked Sakura. She ran over to Lee and put his arm over her shoulders to help steady him. I am fine, Sakura-chan, just a little dizzy. Hee. Lee stood up straight as if to prove it, and promptly fell on his ass. Sorry about that, Lee-san, said a familiar yet deep voice from behind Sakura. Ino and all the others were staring open-mouthed behind her. Sakura wheeled around Naruto, but where Naruto's head was supposed to be was Naruto's crotch. Sakura blushed and slowly began to look up, past the pant line of the dark blue jeans, across a set of washboard abs, past the well-developed chest and shoulders, up a muscular neck and into two very familiar sky-blue eyes, topped by a mop of unruly blonde locks. He had apparently taken off his shirt before his sparring match with Lee-san. Naruto? Even inner Sakura was unnaturally quiet. Wow, Sakura-chan! Naruto yelled, and with that he picked her up off the ground and threw her into the air as if she was a child. Eek. When she landed back in Naruto's arms, she was greeted by lung-crushing hug. Naruto didn't seem to notice. I missed you, Sakura-chan. Naruto put Sakura down, who had by now turned beet red. She quickly squeaked out a good to see you too, Naruto, and then turned around and stiffly walked back to the others, trying to hide her lobster-colored face. A white blur ran past her and tackled Naruto and began to lick his face without mercy. Akamaru! Umph! Kiba, get your dog off of me! Naruto spluttered the words, trying to keep dog drool from entering his mouth. Kiba and the others were doubled over in laughter. Kiba was rolling on the ground. Okay, Akamaru, get your hairy butt back over here before Naruto decides to whip it, panted Kiba after he had gained some control. Naruto scowled at Kiba. I guess that was your gift to me, huh? Figures you'd get me back for beating the crap out of you at the Chunin exam. Kiba rolled his eyes. Ha. Ha, very funny, smartass. Naruto grinned to himself. It's good seeing you too, Kiba. Shikamaru shrugged. Might as well get this over with so I can get back home and sleep. Naruto nodded his head. Come on then, everyone back inside. He made shooing gestures with his hands towards the house. Everyone gathered inside the main living room on the first floor, sitting on the many couches. Damn, I have to say, your house is huge, Naruto, exclaimed Kiba. Naruto scratched the back of his head and gave an embarrassed smile. Yeah, it sure is. I have no idea why Oba-chan gave it to me. Ino and Sakura weren't paying any attention to the boys' conversation. Instead, they were still staring pop-eyed at Naruto's shirtless upper half. Shikamaru noticed the bandages wrapped around Naruto's arms. I'm guessing those are from Lee-san? Well, anyway, here's my gift. I don't expect you to read it or anything, but if you do, it'll help you a lot on things like strategy situations that you find in battles. Naruto examined the book. Sweet. I've always wondered how you played that stupid game. Thanks, Shikamaru. Shikamaru rolled his eyes in exasperation and sat back down next to Chuji. Naruto was confused but grateful for Ino's gift. It's the thought that counts, Ino-chan. Ino sighed and sat back down on the other side of Chuji. Naruto complimented Shino's gift. It's awesome. I'll hang it on my wall. Shino nodded. I'm glad you like it, Naruto-kun. It's good to have you back home. Then of course Naruto was ecstatic over Chuji's gift. Sweet. You can make up your own flavors. Chuji nodded his head vigorously. I've already got one. Here, I'll tell you my favorite recipe. With that, he leaned over and whispered into Naruto's ear as his eyes began to grow wider and sparkle. Hell yeah! I've got to try that one. Thanks a million, Chuji. Naruto and Chuji high-fived with two big goofy grins plastered on their faces. Ino noticed Sakura standing off to the side. Hey, forehead girl. What about your mystery gift? Well? Naruto looked around in surprise. Huh? You got a gift for me, Sakura-chan? And I thought being able to see you again was enough. Sakura blushed and nodded meekly, then walked up to Naruto, staring at the ground in front of her. Naruto looked down at her with concern etched onto his face. What is it, Sakura-chan? Sakura reached in her pack that was slung on her back and slowly pulled out what looked to be a thick blade with a large ring on one end. Naruto's eyes widened in instant recognition. He took the weapon from Sakura's hands and flicked his wrist, causing 3 more blades to unwind into what looked like a bladed windmill with the ring in the middle. It was a Fuma Shuriken. More importantly, to Naruto, it was the Fuma Shuriken used by Uchiha Sasuke on their first ever A-rank mission as a genin team. Naruto looked down and saw tears streaking Sakura-chan's face. Slowly, realization dawned on Naruto. They hadn't found Sasuke. Sakura-chan. Naruto had such sorrow and worry on his face that Sakura couldn't take it any longer. Oh, Naruto! And she threw herself at Naruto and began to sob her pain into his chest. Sakura-chan. Naruto felt like crying himself. He had hoped that when he got back that Sasuke would be waiting and safe. He had fooled himself. He gently wrapped his arms around Sakura and let her cry out her sorrow, trying his best to keep his hidden. The rest of the group had turned their faces from the dramatic scene out of embarrassment. Even Akamaru hid his face in his paws. All except Ino, who was sighing and gazing starry-eyed at the pair in front of her. Shikamaru coughed, and Sakura-chan quickly pushed away from Naruto, blushing and embarrassed at what she had just done. But when she looked into Naruto's eyes, she realized that she had nothing to fear. He hadn't taken it the wrong way. Naruto knew he had lost to Sasuke when it came to Sakura-chan. He knew that long ago. And he saw that in her face just then. They were friends, very good friends now, but still just friends. He smiled sheepishly, letting her know he understood. If he couldn't have her as his girlfriend, then he would help her deal with Sasuke, in whatever way that was. Sakura was considering telling Naruto everything right then, despite her promise to Tsunade-sensei. When Shikamaru and Chuji stood up. Well, it's 2 o'clock, I'm going home and I plan on sleeping the rest of the day. He said the last part while glaring at Ino. She rolled her eyes in annoyance. Sure. Whatever. Naruto's head snapped up. 2 o'clock. He grabbed all his gifts and put them in a pile next to one of the couches, and pulled on his orange shirt, while running towards the front door. Hey, sorry guys. But I'll, see you tomorrow, I guess later. And with that he ran out of the house and towards the front gate. Sakura yelled after him, Naruto. Where are you going? Naruto yelled over his shoulder while waving goodbye. I've gotta go see Hinata-chan. It's important. Later, and exited the front lawn and began to run down the street towards the Hyuga clan house. Ino frowned with confusion. What's so important about Hinata-chan that he has to run out on us at only 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Shikamaru sighed and walked down the steps, formed the front door heading towards the gate, and ultimately bed. He sighed again and looked at the clouds in the sky. Was he the only one that ever noticed these things? Naruto ran as fast as he could. He hoped he remembered where the Hyuga house was. Luckily it wasn't too far away from his own clan house. He had gotten back to Konoha somewhere between 7 and 8 in the morning. He had been planning on convincing Hinata-chan to join him in the Chunin exam and start their training that day. However, he had gotten caught up in exploring his new home. Then Lee-san had come and challenged him to a friendly one-on-one sparring match. That turned a little rough halfway through. Then everyone else from his graduating class had come and given him homecoming gifts, including Lee-san, all except Hinata-chan. It was already past 2 in the afternoon, and it would be evening soon. He had to convince Hinata-chan now, so that they could get some training in before she had to go home. Naruto spotted the walled compound that was the Hyuga clan house. Above the double iron gate was painted the Hyuga clan symbol of the teardrop-shaped flame. He silently shouted with joy that he had found the house so quickly. He came up to the iron-bound gate and noticed it was locked. There was a doorbell complete with an intercom next to the gate. I don't have time for this, he yelled mentally. He remembered going to see Lords with Jiraiya. He was apparently well known and liked by anyone who knew of the Come Paradise books. The Lords had the same setup, a gate with an intercom. Then you would push the doorbell, talk to a door servant through the intercom who asked for an appointment, and said they would check back if you did have one. Naruto remembered waiting for up to an hour outside a lord's house before they were allowed even past the gate. That had been with the famous Jiraiya, who was invited. Naruto was not famous, more like infamous, and he didn't have an appointment. He jumped the wall. Hoping they didn't care too much about security, Naruto dashed to what appeared to him to be the main building, walked up calmly and knocked on the door. Inside he could hear someone jump up and run to the door. It was answered by a middle-aged woman who came to about Naruto's chest in height. She had the white eyes of a Hyuga, and the seal of the branch family tattooed onto her forehead. She looked up at Naruto with shock and fear-filled eyes. What are you doing inside the premises? The gate was locked. Hiashi-sama isn't seeing anyone for another hour. She was apparently panicking, thinking he was either a robber or a visitor that she had forgotten to put in her date book. Naruto laughed and scratched the back of his head. I'm not here to see Hinata-chan's father. I'm here to see Hinata-chan. Sorry, it's kinda important. So I didn't have time to wait for someone to let me in, so I kinda jumped the wall. Sorry, but you gotta understand it is important, and I didn't have a lot of time. The woman calmed down rather quickly, then got a glint in her eye and smiled knowingly. I see. She then proceeded to look Naruto up and down, as if inspecting him. Naruto suddenly remembered that all the Hyugas could use the Byakugan, and turned scarlet red and tried his best to cover his vital areas with his hands. What was wrong with this woman? The woman finished her inspection. Not bad if you asked me. I'd say you're a pretty good one for her first. Young and fit, that's how I like him myself. Haven't had to worry about that though ever since I got married. Oh well. Be a dear and stay right here. I'll send someone to see to you. And she opened the door the rest of the way to let him in, then quickly disappeared down a hallway. Her first marriage? What was that old bat talking about? And who was this her that she was referring to? Naruto didn't have enough time to dwell on his thoughts, for coming into the room was not Hinata, but Hisashi, her father. Hiashi stopped halfway into the room. His eyes widened only slightly in recognition. Uzumaki, I presume, so it was true that you have actually returned to Konoha. His eyes narrowed. What brings you to my household, and without proper invitation? Those eyes. Hiashi was staring hard at Naruto with eyes as cold as ice. He had seen those eyes before, the coldness and accusation they held. Almost all of the village elders, and anyone else who could remember the attack of the Kyuubi looked at him that way. Naruto was only an inch or two taller than Hiashi, but the Hyuga Lord made Naruto feel as if he was only half his height. Hayashi's eyes only narrowed even more at the lack of response. I ask again, what was so important to you, that you had to jump my household wall to get here, Uzumaki? A well of anger began to rise in Naruto, like a fire starting in his gut and working its way up his chest. When Hiashi had paused in saying his name, he could almost hear him say Kyuubi. He suddenly didn't feel so much smaller anymore. Naruto stood up straighter, trying to make himself taller. I came here to see Hinata-chan. It's about the Chunin exam. I want her to enter so that she can pass it with me and become a Chunin. Hiashi was silent for a moment before giving his answer. No. Naruto's eyes widened in anger. What the hell do you mean no? Hiashi grimaced. No, as in, Hinata is not taking the Chunin exam. I will not allow her to disgrace this family again. Naruto could only gape open-mouthed at what the Hyuga Lord just said. What? I thought you would want Hinata-chan to get stronger so that she could be a strong heir. What was wrong with this guy? Hiashi stared at Naruto with icy patience. Hinata is no longer the heir to the Hyuga clan. I have relieved her of that position, and would have put her in the branch house if I could. I have appointed my second daughter, Hanabi, as my successor. Naruto's anger was beginning to get close to its limit. Why would you do something like that? He said through gritted teeth. Hiashi merely stated his reply in cold indifference. Because she is weak. Not only was she defeated by a member of the branch family, she failed her second attempt at achieving Chunin rank. She chose not to try again. She has dishonored this family, and she has dishonored me. She is not fit to be the heir to the Hyuga clan. Naruto closed his eyes, trembling with anger and clenching his fists at his sides. If he was a younger Naruto, a less mature Naruto, he would have thoughtlessly attacked Hinata's father and probably been soundly beaten, if not killed. Naruto raised his eyes to meet Hayashi's. He would not look away. Hinata is not weak. He was still trembling and trying to talk through his grinding teeth. Hiashi smirked, and Naruto realized the man did not smile often for a very good reason. He was twice as intimidating by just giving a small half-smile. Naruto did not take his eyes away from Hayashi's though. You truly believe that, don't you? You truly and foolishly believe that. Naruto kept his gaze on Hayashi's. I don't believe it, I know it. His anger was beginning to recede, replaced by a rock-hard determination. He would not leave until he had talked to Hinata-chan, even if he had to fight to stay inside the grounds. Hayashi noticed the look in Naruto's eyes and his smirk dropped, replaced by his normal scowl. They stared at each other for what seemed to be hours before Hayashi spoke again. Very well, she can do as she wishes. It is no concern of mine. She is weak, and if she wishes to embarrass herself, then so be it. But she will not wear the crest of the Hyuga family if she enters the Chunin exam. She will not shame my house again. And with that he shifted his gaze behind Naruto. Neji, escort the Uzumaki trash out to the gate, and then retrieve Hinata for him. He then turned around with a flourish of his robes and strode down the hall he had come from. Naruto glared at the retreating back of Hyuga Hayashi until he disappeared behind a corner. He then turned around to see a very familiar face calmly watching him. Neji was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed over his chest and his ankles crossed. Neji wore a fishnet shirt with the Chunin vest worn over it. He still had the bandages on his arms like Lee-san, and he wore black leggings that were wrapped with more bandages from the knee down. He was nearly as tall as Naruto, about the same height as Lee-san. His hair had gotten longer, pulled back into a wrist-thick braid that almost reached the ground. Neji only nodded his head, pushed himself from the wall and headed out the door, apparently expecting Naruto to follow him. Naruto caught up to him, and the two men walked in silence until they were outside the front gate. Neji turned to Naruto, and the two stared at each other for nearly 5 minutes before Neji spoke. I apologized. Naruto shook his head in confusion. What? Neji looked intently at Naruto. I apologized to Hinata for what I did at the Chunin exam. I wanted you to know that. Naruto raised his eyebrows in surprise. You apologized to Hinata-chan. Neji nodded his head in confirmation. Alright then, I forgive you, Neji. Neji's eyes widened in surprise, just like that. You forgive me? Naruto nodded his head. Yep. You're the type, I guess, who would only apologize if he meant it. Neji thought about this, and nodded in agreement. I did mean it, Naruto, and I want to apologize to you as well since I didn't get the chance before you left. I am sorry, you were right and I was wrong. I may not be able to change some parts of my life, but I don't have to be chained down by a perceived fate. I can change my destiny. All I have to do is try. And I would like to start over, Naruto. I would like us to be, friends. You are different than what I first thought of you. I think it would be worth getting to know you better. Naruto was stunned. He had never expected Neji to apologize to him, much less offer to be friends. It took him a moment to recover enough to reply, Oh, of course, Neji, I forgive you. And I think it would be great if we were friends. Speaking of, remember that all-around defense thing you did on me during the Chunin exam? Neji nodded yes. The heavenly divine spin technique. It was rather difficult for me to learn. What about it? Naruto grinned, and scratched the back of his head. Well, you see, Ero-Senin apparently dated some chick a while back who was part of the Hyuga clan, and she wasn't too strict about sharing techniques with Jiraiya. Neji's eyes widened in shock. Naruto caught Neji's look and began shaking his head. Don't worry, she didn't tell him about the Byakugan. But she did tell him how to do the heavenly spin thingy, and he taught it to me, and well, I can do it. Neji could only gape in shock at Naruto. The fact that Naruto could perform that technique was impressive. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone else how to do it. I promise. But could you not tell Hisashi about it? I'm guessing I would need Jiraiya to protect me if he found out. Neji frowned. I won't tell him, entrusting that you will not tell anyone else. I hear that trust is a key factor in friendships. Naruto nodded his head vigorously in attempts to stem Neji's worry. I swear I won't. No one will hear from me how to do the, whatever it is, technique unless it's another Hyuga. Neji looked into Naruto's eyes. I suppose I don't have to use the Byakugan in order to tell that you're speaking the truth. Very well, Naruto. I will not tell Hisashi-sama of this. Naruto sighed in relief, then got a serious look in his eyes. Why is Hisashi being so cruel? I don't get it. He's Hinata-chan's father. He should be supporting her. I don't even have a family and I know that. Neji sighed. Ever since the Chunin exam, Hiashi-sama has grown kinder towards me, for he felt pride in my skills. I am after all his brother's son. But he was disappointed with Hinata. Even if I was so skilled, I was still part of the branch house. In his eyes, Hinata should have been stronger, and able to beat me. You have to understand, Naruto, the clan is everything to Hiashi-sama, and he will do everything and anything to make sure it stays the way it is, even if it hurts the clan. He believes strength lies in tradition, and so he will never sway from that path. Neji sighed, his eyes sad before continuing. At first, everything was fine, but as Hiashi-sama began to pay more attention to Hanabi and me, he grew more cold and distant towards Hinata. I had already apologized to her, and it hurt seeing her treated this way. Then after she failed the second Chunin exam, Hiashi-sama renounced Hinata as the heir by announcing Hanabi as the heir in full ceremony. Hinata was crushed, not that she desired to be the heir, but because of her father's rejection. I and her former teammates have been her only comfort. She has rarely left the household. Only from the insistence of Kiba and Shino will she come out. Naruto was trembling again. The anger returned in full force. How could he? That bastard. Damn him for treating Hinata-chan like she was trash. Naruto then remembered what Hisashi had called him, Uzumaki trash, and suddenly his anger was replaced by that rock-hard determination. He would show that Hisashi what trash could really do. He looked up at Neji, who was grinning at his new friend's expression. Go get Hinata-chan for me, will you? Neji smiled one of his very few genuine smiles and nodded his head as he went through the gate to retrieve Hinata. Naruto was waiting impatiently, leaning against the wall next to the gate. It had been nearly half an hour. How long could it take for Neji to convince Hinata-chan to come out? He was considering jumping the wall again and searching for her himself when he heard footsteps and two familiar voices coming towards the gate from inside the wall. Ano, why won't you tell me who it is? Neji Nizan. Trust me, Hinata, it's a surprise that you'll absolutely love. Naruto realized Neji hadn't told Hinata that he was the one who had come to see her. He never thought that Neji had the capacity to be a prankster. Naruto decided to give her a surprise hello. He jumped on top of the wall just as the two Hyugas came through the gate. Naruto's eyes widened at seeing Hinata. She almost hadn't changed one bit, but she had definitely grown. She was almost as tall as Neji, only a couple inches shorter, and her hair was the same bowl cut, but the two strips of hair that framed her face were much longer, and nearly came to her stomach. She wore a baggy zipped-up jacket and baggy pants, effectively hiding her entire figure. She swung her head from side to side. Neji Nizan, I don't see anybody. Can we go back inside now? She turned to face Neji, putting her back to Naruto. Perfect. Naruto jumped down silently directly behind her. Hinata-chan? Hinata stiffened to the point that she resembled a wooden board. Neji was attempting to suppress his grin from turning into a full-blown smile. Hinata, slowly, ever so slowly, turned around to face the towering figure behind her. She couldn't believe it. 3 years since she last saw him, leaving with Jiraiya, his back to her as she hid in the shadows, wanting to say goodbye before he left but unable to bring herself to do so. 3 years, and now the man of her dreams, of every single one of her most secret fantasies, was standing before her. He was so tall and muscular. Hinata blushed even more than she already was at the thought, and he still had that self-confident grin and those beautiful golden locks that she had always secretly wanted to run her hands through. And his eyes, those eyes with irises the color of the noonday sky, were looking at her with the utmost joy. He's actually happy to see me. The thought was too much. Hinata fainted. When Hinata-chan fainted, Naruto didn't know what to think. Had he surprised her maybe a little too much? He reached out of reflex and caught her in his arms before she hit the ground. He looked at the sleeping figure that was resting in his arms. She's really peaceful sleeping. Even pretty. Naruto realized what he was thinking and blushed, quickly diverting his thoughts and turning to Neji. Sorry? Neji shook his head. Don't worry, I'm not surprised that this happened. I was just hoping it wouldn't. Come on, if you're going to convince her that she needs to take the Chunin exam, let's get her away from the clan house before she comes to. Naruto nodded in agreement. But as Neji started to walk away, he began to panic. Wait. Neji! What am I supposed to do? He gestured with his head at the sleeping woman in his arms. Neji simply shrugged. Looks like you gotta carry her. Come on, I know a good place you two can talk. Naruto looked down at Hinata-chan, then sighed and shrugged. Oh well. He put one arm behind her shoulders and one underneath her knees and started to follow Neji. It was okay at first, she was pretty light, but then the sleeping Hinata began to snuggle against his shoulder. Naruto was turning beet red and was walking stiffly, trying his hardest to keep his thoughts from what the sleeping figure was doing in his arms. Hinata awoke from her dream of seeing Naruto return and him actually being happy to see her, when she noticed what she was snuggling was not a pillow or a bed, but a very firm chest. Her pale eyes slowly looked up to be met by sky blue ones. Hey sleepyhead! Rise and shine! Naruto grinned down at her. Hinata squeaked and fainted again. Naruto rolled his eyes and sighed under his breath. At least she wasn't snuggling him anymore. After about 15 minutes of walking through some woods, they came to a very familiar place to Naruto. They were at the training posts, the first time Hinata-chan had truly held a conversation with him, and he started to consider her as one of the people he held precious. Neji gestured toward the ground. Go ahead and lay her down here. I'm going to go and do some chores. I'll be back in a few hours. This way you two can get some privacy, and you might have a better chance of convincing her if no one else is around. Neji began to walk back the way they came. Neji, wait. What if she faints again? Neji yelled over his shoulder while walking away. Then just wait for her to wake back up. She has to stop fainting sometime. Naruto growled, but complied. He lay Hinata down on the dry grass and sat a couple feet away waiting for her to wake up. He didn't have to wait long. She began to stir and sit up, rubbing at her eyes. Please don't let her faint again when she sees me. Hinata-chan? Hey, it's me, Naruto. You remember me? Naruto spoke softly, hoping not to startle her. Hinata looked up very slowly. And Naruto-kun? She said so softly that Naruto had to strain his ears to hear her. Yeah, it's me. Good you didn't faint this time. Sorry about surprising you back at your house. I didn't know I'd scare you so much. Naruto scratched the back of his head as he apologized. Hinata smiled meekly and began to twiddle her fingers while staring at her feet, an old habit she had whenever she got nervous. It's okay, Naruto-kun, you just surprised me, that's all. Then Hinata noticed where she was. Why are we here? She was blushing furiously. It hadn't been a dream after all. He had been happy to see her, and he had carried her in his arms. Naruto grinned. So that I could talk to you, I carried you while Neji showed me the way here. He left to do some chores so we could talk. Hinata's heart jumped and began to beat faster. Naruto-kun wanted to talk with her. He wanted to talk with her. Hinata froze, her heart pounding so hard she was afraid Naruto-kun could hear it. What about? Naruto got a serious look, making Hinata's heart skip a beat. He was so handsome. I want you to take the Chunin exam. Oba-chan's already registered me for it, and it's in 7 days. I know you can do it, Hinata-chan, and together we'll definitely pass. Hinata began to panic. But father, he'll never let me. Not unless I don't wear the clan sea crest. He would never forgive me. She was fighting to keep back the tears. Naruto frowned. So what? He yelled, standing up suddenly, causing Hinata to jump in fear that she had angered him somehow. So what? Who the hell cares what that head thinks? Hinata couldn't believe her ears. Naruto-kun was insulting her father. The man who could probably kill with one cold glance. The man whose power she had always feared her entire life. And Naruto-kun, why you must not say such things. But Naruto just barreled over her reply. He was shouting now and pacing back and forth. Yes, I must. Your father treats you like trash, Hinata-chan. You deserve better. You may think you're not good enough, but I know you are. You are strong, Hinata-chan. I've seen it. So what if you didn't beat Neji? So what if you didn't pass the second exam? I believe you're strong because you kept getting up, never staying down. That's strength, Hinata-chan, and if your father can't realize that, then I say screw him and his family crest. I say try again. Come on, Hinata-chan. Show me that you're strong. Naruto's voice quieted, and he held out his hand for Hinata. Please don't make me out to be a liar, Hinata-chan. And with that he smiled his confident grin, waiting patiently with his hand extended down to her. Hinata couldn't believe it. She was on the verge of tears, but for the first time in 3 years they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pure and utter joy. He believed in her. He truly believed that she was strong. He had confidence that she could feel seeping into her body, and into her bones. And then she found herself thinking things she had never dared thought before. So what? Who cared what her father thought anymore? He apparently didn't care about what she thought, or even how she felt. He only cared about the clan way of life. Who cared if she didn't wear the clan crest to the exam? It's not like her father would give a damn if she passed or failed anyway. Hinata suddenly realized what she was thinking and blushed deeply in shame. But when she looked up into those so blue eyes, she knew she had made up her mind. Joy exploded inside of her like she had never felt before. He not only believed in her, he wanted her of all people by his side during the Chunin exam. A full-blown genuine smile bloomed on Hinata-chan's face like a flower. Tears were rolling down her eyes and she was laughing. Naruto couldn't help but smile and laugh too. He had never seen her smile like that before. He had to get her to do it more often. She was really pretty when she did. Then unexpectedly she threw herself past his outstretched hand and into his chest, wrapping arms around him and burying her face in his chest. Yes. Yes, I will take the Chunin exam with you. Then she suddenly realized what she had done on pure impulse. She was hugging him. She instantly turned as red as a lobster. But before she could retreat or stammer an apology, Naruto wrapped his arms around her and picked her up. That's great, Hinata-chan. I'm glad you're going to be there with me. Hinata was so stunned at the fact that the man of her dreams was hugging her that she couldn't even think of hugging him back before he put her down. Alright then, Hinata, we got some work to do. We gotta train every day before the exam starts. So let's start now before it gets dark. We still got plenty of light left. They did actually, it was only 4 o'clock. Hinata was still blushing. Ano, what are we going to be working on, Naruto-kun? She was twiddling her fingers again. Every day. She was going to be with Naruto-kun all day every day for the next week. It was like a dream come true. It wouldn't be like school. He would actually talk to her and focus his attention on her. It was almost too much. Naruto grinned. Well, I've been training for 3 years, and you almost quite being a shinobi for just as long, so we'll be mostly working on your techniques and stuff like that. Hinata paled. She was happy and terrified at the same time. He would really be paying attention to her now, but that meant he would see her mess up. She couldn't bear the thought of disappointing him. Naruto didn't seem to notice though. Alright, I know your clan does the Juken style of fighting, but what I guess, from watching your fight with Neji, is that you're not very good at close quarters combat. Am I right so far? Hinata wilted under Naruto-kun's criticism, but nodded anyway. Hi. Naruto nodded. Alright then, I'll just have to teach you something different that will make you better. Hinata looked up surprised. What are you going to teach me, Naruto-kun? She whispered anxiously. She didn't want to disappoint him by failing at learning what he was going to show her. Naruto grinned. I got this awesome idea for you, Hinata-chan. Alright, when you use Juken, you're making a spike of chakra that's used to damage your opponent's chakra system when you make contact with them, right? Hinata nodded, surprised at Naruto's knowledge of her clan's style of fighting. Naruto was starting to get excited. Okay, say that I could teach you how to shoot those spikes of chakra at a distance. That way you wouldn't have to worry about being fast enough to hit the right spots on your opponent. You could take your time and aim. Plus you wouldn't have to worry about being hit. You could take down enemies from a distance. Wouldn't that be great? Hinata's eyes widened in shock. Use her Juken from a distance? That had never been done before. But Naruto-kun, how could I do that? When I release the my chakra, it dissipates almost instantly. Naruto laughed. Don't worry, Hinata-chan. I got it figured all out. Naruto grabbed a stick and began to draw in the dirt, gesturing toward Hinata to come closer so she could see. She slowly creeped closer, bending over his shoulder so she could see. Naruto had drawn 2 figures. One was apparently using Juken, making the chakra spike very visible. The second figure was launching the chakra spike from their palm. Okay, normal Juken. Naruto pointed at the first figure. What happens when you try to throw a Juken chakra spike? Naruto took his finger and erased the chakra spike from the second figure. It dissipates, just like you said. Hinata nodded, seeing that Naruto continued. Alright, well I figured that if you put spin to it, it would be able to last longer while flying through the air. Kinda like a bullet, the faster it spins the farther it flies. Naruto redrew the erased chakra spike, except this time drawing a spiral around to show that it spun. Understanding dawned on Hinata. Why, you could teach me how to do that, Naruto-kun? If she could do this, her Juken would be nearly unstoppable. Naruto grinned wide. I sure can. It's just like when I trained to learn Rasengan. Except without step 2 or 3, I'm just going to teach you how to spin your chakra in your palm as fast you can. And with that, Naruto stood up and pulled a balloon out of his pocket. Then he did a couple of hand seals and whispered water gathering jutsu. The water from the ground began to rise up and formed into one stream and poured into the balloon, filling it up. Then he tied it off and handed it to Hinata-chan. Okay, Hinata-chan, focus your chakra into the water in the balloon and try to spin it as fast as you can. You'll know you got when the balloon is almost as flat as a pancake. Hinata held the balloon delicately in her palm. Her heart was pounding at 1,000 beats a minute. There he was, standing there expectantly, waiting for her to do as he asked. She didn't want to disappoint him, but what if she couldn't do it? What if she messed up so much that he gave up on her? The thought was too much for her to take. Hinata collapsed on her knees sobbing, holding the water balloon to her chest. She wasn't going to be able to do it. Her father was right, she wasn't good enough. She was a failure. She had failed him, and now she was failing Naruto-kun because she knew she couldn't do it. Naruto stood dumbfounded at the sight of the crying girl crouched at his feet. He never knew what to do when a girl cried around him. He was tempted to run away out fear of messing up whatever he tried to do. But he felt that that wasn't the right thing to do here. So he slowly got to his knees and placed his hand on Hinata-chan and began to rub her back. Hinata-chan, what's wrong? Through choked sobs he could hear her reply, I am sorry and Naruto-kun, I can't do it. I'll let you down. Naruto suddenly felt the very strong urge to protect Hinata-chan from, everything. Her father, her fears and worries, and anyone else who would hurt her. Without thinking, Naruto slid his arms around Hinata, lifted her so she was sitting up and hugged her to him so that she was crying into his shoulder. Hinata froze. Naruto-kun was hugging her again, but this time it was different. She suddenly felt very warm and she had a feeling of security and safety. She soon felt that she didn't want to cry anymore. He hadn't turned away, calling her a failure, he had instead showed her that he cared and that he still believed in her. Hinata felt her arms wrap around Naruto as she rested her head on his shoulder. They sat there like that, holding on to each other, for what seemed like forever to Hinata. Before Naruto spoke, "You can do it, Hinata-chan. I know you can, you just have to keep trying." Naruto paused. "Trust me." Hinata was overwhelmed with confidence, and something she had not felt in a long time, determination. Thank you, Naruto-kun." Naruto pulled away from her so she could see his face, and smiled. "No problem, Hinata-chan, you're my friend, and I know you can do it." Hinata was shocked and then a sense of joy seeped in to replace it. Friend. He had just called her friend. This was more than she could ever hope for. She thought she was just going to be his teammate, and she was planning on being the best one she could. But he had called her friend. It was what she had always wanted, not what she secretly hoped for, but what she hoped someday would happen. Tears began to well up in her eyes again. Naruto almost panicked when he saw the tears in Hinata-chan's eyes. He didn't want her to cry again, but then he saw her smiling. She really was pretty when she smiled. Hinata stood up on her own. "Alright, let's get this balloon as flat as pancake." Naruto jumped up. "Yeah, Hinata-chan. That's what I'm talking about." Hinata blushed when Naruto smiled at her. "Let's get to training." Hinata lay in her bed unable to sleep. She couldn't stop thinking about the day before. Naruto-kun had proclaimed his friendship to her, and they had hugged. The mere thought made Hinata squirm and let out an involuntary giggle. Those thoughts had been running through her head all through their training session and throughout the rest of the evening, especially when he had walked her home and had said goodbye. They didn't hug, but Naruto-kun had said to meet him outside his front gate at 8 a.m. in the morning so they could start training early and get some serious work done on her new technique throughout the rest of the day. She had been upset at first at the fact that she could barely get the water to spin in the balloon at first. But when she was about to break down again, thinking that all her hope had just been demolished, Naruto-kun had just came up and patted her back and said she was doing great. Her doubts had been instantly erased, and her newly found bit of confidence returned, though she did blush quite a bit at his touch, even if it was just a pat on the back. Naruto-kun had said it took him longer to get as far as she had, and so the rest of the hours had passed with her intently concentrating on the water balloon, and Naruto-kun patiently watching only a few feet away. At times she would become conscious of Naruto-kun's closeness, and the fact that his attention was purely on her, or thoughts of them hugging would intrude and she would have to start over again because the water lost its velocity. But that didn't stop her from trying, not this time, not with Naruto-kun standing by and having the utmost confidence in her no matter how many times she messed up. Finally, when the sun had sunk halfway down the horizon, they decided to call it a night and head home. She had gotten to the point where the balloon was violently swishing from side to side and had begun to warp. He had offered to walk her home because he wanted to make sure that she got home okay. She had agreed, but reluctantly. What would they talk about? She didn't need to worry about it during the training because they were only focusing on getting her techniques down. But now as they walked through the golden haze of late evening, their shadows grown long in front of them, they walked in an awkward silence. Naruto-kun trying to find something to talk about, and her trying to find the courage to start a conversation. They walked in silence. Naruto felt a little awkward. He had offered to walk her home, even though it was only a 15-minute walk, and now he couldn't find anything to say to her. He was feeling kinda weird, he couldn't explain it, and he didn't know why. Hinata was having an internal struggle, more like an internal war actually. She had so many things to say to him, and yet she couldn't bring herself to say even the most discreet things, like "How do you think I did today?" or "Are we going to train tomorrow?" She didn't know what was wrong with her that she couldn't bring herself to just open her mouth. Before both of them knew it, they could see the front gate to the Hyuga household. She wanted to say goodbye, she wanted to say anything, just something to get rid of this silence. But she couldn't bring herself to do it, so instead of making herself look like a fool just standing there in silence waiting for something to happen, she turned and started to walk slowly and stiffly back to her house. But she had only taken 3 steps when the worst that could happen, happened. She tripped. Naruto stood there awkwardly. He wanted to say goodbye, but he didn't know how to bring himself to do it. Should he say it? Give her a handshake or a pat on the back? Or should he hug her like they did early that afternoon? Naruto almost blushed at that thought. He was thinking that he might have enjoyed that a little too much. Damn Jiraiya, his perverseness was apparently rubbing off on him. But then Hinata-chan turned and started to walk towards her house, her hands in the pockets of her baggy jacket. She had only gone a couple of steps when she tripped on the hem of her overly baggy pants. She was going to fall straight on her face. Naruto did the only thing he could. He lunged and dived in front of her to catch her. Oh my gods! Naruto had his arms around her and pinning her arms to her sides, and she was laying on top of him. Hinata-chan, are you okay? Hinata had gone as stiff as a board. Her hands were still in her pockets, and as long as Naruto-kun's arms were around her she couldn't push herself off of him. She felt a heat that she had never felt before start to rise from her stomach and encompass her entire being. She was blushing so furiously that her entire body had to be red. She began to squirm, trying to get herself off of him as quickly as possible. Naruto had caught her before she hit the ground, but then she started to squirm in his arms, causing him to turn beet red as she moved against his body. Hinata-chan? Could you, not do that please? Hinata froze, realizing what she was doing. Embarrassment overlapped by pure horror filled her to the brim. Tears began to leak from her eyes, and Naruto-kun, I am so sorry. She tried hiding her face so he couldn't see her tears, but that only ended up with her snuggling his chest. She couldn't believe she was messing up so badly. She had finally gotten the love of her life as a friend who believed in her. And now here she was making herself out to be a complete klutz and fool. How could she expect him to forgive her for this? The tears began to come faster, and her body was shaking with her silent sobbing. Naruto was stupefied. She was crying again. Damn it! Why did he keep making her cry? She must think that he was a real asshole or something now. He had made her cry twice in only the span of a few hours. Naruto sat up with her in his arms. Hinata-chan, why are you sorry? I'm the one who made you cry. Hinata stopped her sobbing at what Naruto-kun had just said. She looked up at him, her puffy, tear-filled eyes meeting his bright blue ones, so filled with concern that she almost hated herself more for making him worry. And Naruto-kun, you did not make me cry. I just thought you were upset. Why with me? Naruto began to laugh with relief, sudden realization dawning on him. As Hinata-chan looked up at him, a mixed expression of shock and confusion. I'm not upset with you, Hinata-chan. Everyone trips. It's not like it's a bad thing or something, even I trip sometimes. Naruto gave a small laugh at that. Yeah, I can be sort of, clumsy sometimes. Hinata stared up at the sheepishly smiling man with obvious disbelief. Naruto-kun, clumsy? I don't think you're clumsy, Naruto-kun. Naruto looked down into those white eyes and saw that she was being completely serious. Oh. Well, I am sometimes. So don't go thinking you're the only one, okay? 'Cause everyone is sometimes. Hinata nodded her head very slowly. Oh, and another thing, Hinata-chan, don't ever think I'm upset with you. You're the type of person that I can really like. I don't think I could ever be upset with you. Okay? He was apparently expecting an answer. Hinata had to swallow down more tears before they could surface again. Hinata looked away, blushing instead, and quickly nodded her head. Naruto waited until she nodded her head. Good. And with that, Naruto slowly got up, making sure that he didn't rub up against Hinata-chan in any way that could be deemed as wrong, and picked her up with him, setting her on her feet in front of him. He had his hands on her waist for a moment before he realized how he was holding her. His hands quickly flew away from her, one behind his back and one behind his head, smiling and blushing the entire time, trying to make it seem like nothing had happened. Hinata-chan was staring at her feet, twiddling her fingers and blushing. She had a ghost of smile of her lips though. Well, Hinata-chan, today you did really great, I'd have to say. We'll work on it more tomorrow. Can you meet me at this address? He reached into his pockets on his jeans and handed her a piece of paper. It's just a little bit past your house. It's not hard to find, trust me. Hinata was ecstatic. Everything had only seemed to be dream, especially the fact that she would be able to see him every day. But now it was made apparent that she wasn't dreaming. He really did want to train with her every day for the next 7 days. Hinata was at loss for words, and so she simply nodded her head. Naruto grinned. Oh, and before I go. You know you wouldn't trip so often if you didn't wear such baggy pants. You should try wearing shorts or something. It would be easier to train in. Hinata-chan looked at the ground and nodded very slowly, twiddling her fingers. Oh, okay. I'll see what I can do. Naruto smiled and started walking back towards his house. He turned around so he was walking backwards, waving goodbye. See you tomorrow, Hinata-chan. Remember 8 a.m. Hinata tried her best to smile and gave a weak wave in return. He then turned around and began to sprint home. Hinata must have stood there for half an hour, staring at the piece of paper he had given her before she walked to her house. She must have memorized every line on that one piece of paper. She lay on her bed, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other gently holding the piece of paper he had given her only a couple of hours ago. She blushed at the memory of her tripping, but for some reason she couldn't stop playing the scene in her head. She realized it was getting late, and that she really needed to go to sleep if she was going to get up early and train with Naruto-kun. So she turned on her side and snuggled into the pillow, inwardly smiling as she let the thoughts of her time with Naruto-kun lull her into a dream-filled sleep. She was standing out front of a house complex that was nearly as large as her own. This was Naruto-kun's house. Last she heard, he lived in a small apartment, all by himself. When did he get house? Not only that, an old clan house. He must have gotten it when he had come back yesterday. She had arrived an hour early, just to make sure she was on time. As each minute dragged by though, she grew more and more convinced that he wasn't going to come out. She thought about going onto the premises, but he had told her he would meet her out front, so she instantly banished that thought. Finally, as the time came to only a couple of minutes before 8 a.m., Hinata was pacing back and forth, agitated, out of her mind and on the verge of tears, thinking that she had fooled herself into believing that he really wanted to train with her, when she heard the gate open and there with his back turned to her busily closing the gate was Naruto-kun. Naruto turned around to see Hinata-chan patiently standing and waiting for him. Hey Hinata-chan. I thought you'd be a little later. He had just caught sight of what she was wearing. She still had the baggy jacket on, but underneath the jacket he could just see the hem of a pair of jean shorts. Really short shorts. She had worn shorts at the last Chunin exam, when they were younger, but apparently she had grown. Very apparently. It took him a second to realize that he was staring and quickly looked up and tried very hard to keep looking at her face, not letting his gaze drop lower. Hinata noticed that Naruto-kun had been staring at her exposed legs, and blushed, turning to the side, so she wasn't looking at him and began playing with her fingers again. Aino-chan got them for me a couple years ago. I haven't worn them yet. Naruto noticed her embarrassment at what she was wearing. Don't worry Hinata-chan, I think they look great on you. You should wear them more often. He tried to put on his most reassuring smile. Hinata looked up quickly in surprise. Ah really? Naruto-kun looked her in the eye, and with a grin said yeah really. You should have Ino buy you more pairs. Hinata had never been complimented by someone of the opposite sex about her looks before. Thank you Naruto-kun. Naruto grinned one of his big goofy smiles. No problem Hinata-chan. It's true, so don't worry about it. Come on. We got some training to get to. And with that he grabbed her hand and began to lead her to the training posts where they had trained yesterday. He had put himself in front for a good reason. He did not want to walk behind Hinata-chan. He didn't trust his eyes. Hinata blushed when Naruto-kun grabbed her hand and began to lead her to the training posts. She allowed herself to be led, letting herself memorize the feel of his hand around hers. The water balloon held in her hand was getting flatter and flatter as she swirled the water inside it using her chakra. Sweat beaded her brow and her 2 locks of hair were plastered to her face, damp with the sweat of her exertion. But she paid no attention. She was going to do this. She had learned from their first day training together that the only way to accomplish something was to keep trying, never giving up, no matter what. It was their 4th day training together, after their talk in first day, and every day they had focused on her chakra spinning, trying to get it as fast as possible. There were 3 more days left. Naruto stood nearby, gazing intently at the water balloon in Hinata-chan's hand. She was farther than him when he had spun his chakra like that when he was trying to learn the Rasengan. The balloon was already flat as a pancake, and it was getting even more thin and stretched. Naruto was impressed. He had never seen someone spin chakra that fast before. She had to do this. She had to do it for Naruto-kun. He was depending on her. She had to do it. She had to. Naruto's eyes widened as the balloon suddenly sped up its flattening. Hinata-chan was biting her lower lip and frowning in concentration, her other hand clenched into a fist at her side. They were already sweaty from basic workout routines and maneuvers, but she was beginning to sweat like a waterfall. He was about to tell she had done enough when he saw the look in her eyes, the pure determination. The balloon was nearly a foot wide now, and it was still stretching wider and getting thinner. Then it seemed to stall. It was at least 2 feet wide now and as thin as paper and was hovering above Hinata's palm because of the amount of chakra she was using. No, she had to go farther. Naruto-kun was depending on her. Naruto watched as Hinata-chan closed her eyes and tensed her entire body. She began to turn red in the face from the exertion, and her entire body trembled from her overtensed muscles. Naruto really was about to tell her stop then when the water balloon began to waver and ripple. It was getting faster and faster by the second until it was literally vibrating. Hinata opened mouth for a moment in a silent yell, then ah-ha-h-h-h-h-h-h. She couldn't contain herself. She had to scream due to the amount of exertion she was putting out. She was now on her knees, the water balloon held in one hand above her head. Naruto stood stunned. He didn't know Hinata-chan had it in her to go this far. He could tell she was already past her limit, but she was still going. What could possibly be driving her? Then all of a sudden boom, the water balloon exploded with a deafening roar, and there was shock wave from the release of pressure. Naruto barely had enough time to duck as water from the spinning balloon went in all directions. Luckily he did, for he saw that the water had been spinning so fast and with such force that it had left lacerations on the trees where the water had hit. Hinata was on her hands and knees panting for breath. Her entire body was numb, especially her hand where she held the balloon. She could feel prickles that felt like needles running up and down her fingers before it slowly began to fade. Naruto-kun came over and slowly lifted her up so she was standing. A wave of dizziness hit her, and she fell into his arms. Naruto just wrapped his arms around her, picked her up and hugged her. Wow! That was amazing Hinata-chan! That was so totally amazing, that was so much better than what I could do. You are so ready to try this out with your new technique. Hinata barely heard him. He hadn't hugged her since the first day they trained, and now she was lifted off the ground as her head lay nestled against Naruto-kun's neck. She merely nodded her head, stammering a thank you and hoping he would never put her down. He did though, and regrettably she pulled her head off his shoulder. Naruto looked at Hinata with concern. She was tired from using so much energy. You used a lot of chakra Hinata-chan. You need to rest. I don't think we're going to get much farther today. Hinata felt herself blush at Naruto's concern for her well-being, but she felt ashamed as well. She had used up all her available chakra for the day. She wouldn't be able to do anything more unless she got some sleep. I am sorry Naruto-kun, I shouldn't have done that. Naruto, however, grinned. Don't worry about it Hinata-chan, what you did was amazing. You deserve some rest. Tomorrow we can try you actually shooting your chakra. He saw Hinata-chan blush, and smile weakly, making him only grin more. For some reason he felt really good when he made her happy. Naruto thought a moment. We're going to have to do something about your lack of chakra though. You'll only be able to use this technique a few times before you run out of energy. Hinata wilted. He was right. It took a lot of energy to get her chakra to spin at the speed that they had determined to be fast enough. She suddenly felt very useless. What good would she be if she passed out from exhaustion in the middle of a battle? I am sorry. Naruto held up his hand. Don't apologize, Hinata-chan. I got it all figured out. Tomorrow we'll try out your new technique, and then I'll have surprise for you. So come on, let's get you home so you can rest. Hinata looked at him questioningly. He could fix her problem of not having that much chakra. How? But she got rid of those thoughts. He asked her on their first day to trust him, and that's what she was going to do. Hinata smiled and nodded her head. Hi. They walked home again, but it was different ever since that first evening. They still walked in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. They took comfort in knowing the other was there beside them. Naruto made sure he didn't walk behind Hinata as long as she wore her shorts. Matter of fact, he tried to focus as much as possible on her upper extremities, but it was distracting at times. When she was going through her warm-up exercises, Naruto had to turn his back or do some warming up of his own. It was hard not to stare at Hinata-chan's exposed legs. When they reached Hinata's house, Naruto would say goodbye and that he would see her tomorrow. Hinata would stammer a goodbye and then watch Naruto until he disappeared down the street before going to her house and ultimately to her room, where she would lie and think about the day's events and daydream about Naruto hugging her. Today she was home early though. She took a shower to cool herself off and to wash off all the sweat and grime. She then got dressed in some sweat bottoms and a white t-shirt, and was yawning when she slipped under the covers of her bed. She really had used a lot of energy today. She fell asleep before her head barely touched the pillow. Naruto went home and to his room, where he took a long and hot bath in the giant steaming bathtub. After a couple hours of soaking, he wrapped himself in a white towel and sat in the sauna for a bit, mulling over his thoughts. Why couldn't he stop looking at Hinata-chan's legs? He knew he shouldn't have suggested wearing shorts to her. And why every time he saw her he wanted to hug her? It was different from the few times he had. She was either really upset or really happy. But each morning he saw her, before they headed out to train, he wanted to put his arms around her and just, well, hug her. Why did she make him feel like that? He felt awkward when he was around her sometimes, and sometimes he couldn't think of anything to say, which was weird. He was always talking in one way or another. Why couldn't he talk sometimes when he was around her? There were a lot of feelings swimming around in him, and he couldn't seem to figure out what they were. Each time he tried to figure one feeling out, it would slip from his grasp like water. And worse, every time he saw Hinata-chan, those feelings got stronger, so much that they became even harder to understand. Naruto rested his elbows on his knees and hung his head. What was wrong with him? Was he sick or something? He decided Oba-chan would know. She seemed to understand him best sometimes. Yeah, that was it. After the Chunin exam he could ask Oba-chan if he was sick or something. She was a healer after all. She could tell him what was wrong and how to fix it. Naruto grinned at his decision and nodded his head at satisfaction. He then got up and left the sauna to go and prepare some ramen with his new do-it-yourself ramen maker, the one Chuji had gotten him a few days ago. Hinata woke up to find that it was the middle of the night. She looked at her clock, the glowing red numbers displaying that it was 1 o'clock in the morning. She hadn't expected to sleep in so long. She still had 7 hours before she would see Naruto-kun, but she was awake now though, and no matter how hard she tried she couldn't get back to sleep. Hinata slipped out of bed and quietly slipped on her robe and slippers. She was going to take a walk in the gardens for a bit. Maybe she could get herself tired enough where she would fall back asleep. Hinata quietly slipped out of her room and tiptoed down the hallway. She no longer slept in the same building with her father, sister, or anyone else of the main family. Ever since she was renounced from her position as heir, her father had moved her room to the sleeping quarters of the branch family. Hinata didn't mind though. She was closer to Neji Nizan, and to the gardens, where she was headed to now. Hinata finally reached the gardens. They weren't large, but they had nice cobblestone walkways that winded through a relatively small maze of flowers, all arranged to complement the other, and making a vast rainbow of colors. Hinata walked along the paths, lost in her thoughts of what could happen tomorrow during her training with Naruto. When she heard familiar voice, "You couldn't sleep either?" She nearly jumped out of her skin, and turned around to see Neji in his own sleeping robe standing calmly and patiently, watching her. Neji walked up and stood by her, looking at a group of sky blue tulips Hinata had been studying. "I was awake and I heard you get up. You were sleeping all day. Had rough time training with Naruto-san?" Neji looked up to see Hinata blushing. "I tired myself out." So Naruto-kun decided to call it a day. Hinata had begun to twiddle her fingers again. Neji smiled to himself. She seemed to be enjoying herself training with Naruto-san. He hadn't seen Hinata this happy in a long time, and she had been pretty cheerful the past few days. Neji stopped smiling, and tilted his face so that he was looking at the star-filled sky. "Hinata?" Hinata looked up from staring at her feet at the sound of Neji's voice. He had a forlorn and faraway look in his eyes as he stared at the stars. He looked back down into his cousin's eyes, white meeting white. "What does it feel like to be in love?" Hinata could only gape in shock at Neji Nizan's question. What do you mean? What makes you think I would know anything about?" Neji became serious, staring intently into Hinata's eyes. "I know that you love him, Hinata." Hinata was blown away. Neji knew? How did he? How could he? She had never revealed her feelings to anyone before, she had never written them down or recorded them in any way. All her feelings for Naruto-kun were stored inside her. She could only stammer. What was she supposed to say? Neji smiled, causing Hinata to relax a little. What did you expect? It's obvious that you're attracted to him. It was obvious 3 years ago, and it's obvious now. You're always blushing more often than usual, and having a harder time saying a straight sentence when he's anywhere within 100 feet of you. Hinata only stared, mouth hanging open. Had she been that obvious? Or was it just Neji's uncanny ability to read people's emotions? Neji didn't need the Byakugan to know how someone felt, he was an expert on how people thought. She had just hoped he wouldn't notice with her thoughts. Apparently she had hoped for too much. Neji smiled at his cousin's embarrassment. It's okay, Hinata. Naruto-san and I are friends now. I am not angry or anything, matter of fact I wish you the best of luck. Neji apparently wasn't used to using the term friend, it was still new to him. Hinata smiled one of her genuine smiles at Neji. She suddenly squeaked and lunged towards Neji, hugging him, laughing. She never expected anyone, much less her cousin Neji, to wish her luck in capturing the interest of none other than her Naruto-kun. Neji smiled, hugging his cousin back. You still haven't answered my question. Hinata looked up at Neji wonderingly. What's it like to be in love? Hinata smiled back. She finally had someone to share her feelings with, and so for the first time ever, she proceeded to state her feelings for the man she loved out loud and into the open. Alright, Hinata-chan. Let's try this thing. Come on, I want to see this in action. They were at the training posts. It was the day after Hinata's talk with Neji Nizan. She had felt numb for most of the morning at the memory of that talk. She had told Neji Nizan everything. She tried to hold things back like what some of her dreams and fantasies contained, but somehow Neji had drugged out every single detail about her feelings for Naruto-kun. She was still blushing from some of the things she told him. She knew he wouldn't, but if Neji Nizan really wanted to, he could do some serious blackmailing. Hinata had been confused that morning as well at why Neji wanted to know so much about how she felt for Naruto-kun. Why did he want to know anyway? Hinata-chan? Hinata looked up to see Naruto standing close with a worried look on his face. I am fine, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled. Alright then. Let's do this. Hinata smiled and began. Byakugan. She yelled, veins popping up behind her eyes. This time she didn't have a water balloon, but she had been using chakra through her hands ever since she was little. She was sensitive to the movements of chakra throughout her body. The chakra in her hand began to spin. Hinata frowned with concentration. It only took a couple of seconds now to get the chakra to spin fast enough. She heard Naruto beside her. You ready, Hinata-chan? Hinata nodded, keeping her eyes focused on the target, the tree up ahead, whose chakra she was focusing on. Alright then, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Hinata shot her hand forward as if pushing something away from her and released the chakra spinning in her palm. There was a blue flash of chakra from Hinata's palm, looking a lot like a gun going off. Naruto stared. All he saw was the blue flash and nothing else. He was about to try and reassure Hinata-chan and tell her to do it again, when he saw her smiling widely. Hinata-chan? Did it work? Hinata turned to look at Naruto. Of course. He didn't have the Byakugan, so he couldn't see the chakra she had just launched. She nodded her head. Why yes. It worked, Naruto-kun. She almost yelled in joy. She had done it. There was a bright flash of visible chakra, then an invisible spike of chakra came whirling from her palm. She could see it though thanks to her activated blood limit. The spike was about 3, maybe 4 feet long, and it was only an inch wide or so. The spinning of the chakra formed it into this thin shape and caused it to fly farther and longer before dissipating. She guessed her max range was about 100 yards. And there in the tree, as proof of her success, was a perfect hole in the tree's chakra, exactly 1 inch wide and precisely where she had aimed. She deactivated her blood limit, and turned to look at Naruto-kun. Naruto began jumping up and down after she described it to him. Woohoo! That's awesome, Hinata-chan, that really rocks. Hey, Naruto exclaimed, his face becoming thoughtful. I just thought of a name for this. We'll call it the Jukin arrow. It'll be our secret weapon during the Chunin exam. Naruto looked at her expectantly. What do you think, Hinata-chan? Hinata smiled. Hi. I love the name Naruto-kun. She was nearly jumping up and down like Naruto-kun. She had done it. She had succeeded at doing something. Not only that, she had her own special technique, completely unique to her, and right now the only 2 people in the world who knew about it was her and Naruto-kun. Hinata's smile dropped though. But it uses up so much chakra that I'll only be able to do it 5, maybe 10 times before I run out. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. She hung her head in shame. She had done it, yes, but what was the use if she wasn't efficient at using it? Naruto smiled and held up one finger. I told you to stop apologizing, Hinata-chan, and besides I also told you I had that problem completely figured out, remember? Hinata could only stare as Naruto pulled from his pockets 2 long strips of what looked like ordinary white cloth. Here, Hinata-chan, put these on, and handed them to her. Hinata held them up to her face, not knowing what to do with them, or what was going on for that matter. Naruto saw her confused expression, and so he took her hands in his own and began to wrap the cloth around her arms. Hinata looked away in attempts to hide her blush. His hands gently wrapping the cloth around her arms and brushing lightly up against her skin was sending shivers up and down her arms and back. That warmth that she had felt before was beginning to spread through her body when he finally finished. Not too tight, I hope. Hinata shook her head, breathing heavily and trying to regain control of her tingling body. And no, they are fine. The bandages were wrapped around her palms and then up to her elbows. What are they? And Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled and said, you'll see, use your Byakugan. Hinata quickly activated her advanced bloodline limit, and was stunned by what she saw. The wrappings were full of glowing and swirling chakra. They were so bright it almost hurt her eyes. She had never seen so much before except when she looked at Naruto-kun. What are these? She asked, amazed. Naruto grinned, pleased with himself. Lee-san got them for me for a homecoming gift. They store as much chakra as someone can put into them in a day, and they store that chakra indefinitely. Ero-sennin's always telling me about how much of a chakra freak I am, and my stamina and chakra are some of the highest he's seen. So I figured if I have so much chakra then maybe I could lend it to you. He was right. Hinata looked at the armbands again and tried to judge how much there was. I could use the Juken arrow 100 times, probably more, and that's W with each one. Hinata couldn't believe it. He was going to let her use these when he could be using them himself? Naruto-kun, I can't take these. Why you should be using them, not me. Naruto frowned. Nonsense, Hinata-chan. You're going to use them for the Chunin exam. You and I both know that you need them more than I. Besides, I have plenty of chakra to spare for the both of us, and that's without those arm bandages. Now come on, let's work on your new Juken arrow. And so they did. Hinata couldn't find any reason to complain, and she was truthfully grateful that Naruto-kun would give her something so precious. That night Hinata lay in her bed, the arm bandages still on. She wasn't going to take them off until the end of the Chunin exam. She wasn't sure if she was ever going to take them off. She had used her own chakra to restore what she used during training. She couldn't get to sleep because she had realized something. Everyone else had gotten Naruto-kun gifts when he had returned home. She hadn't gotten him anything. Worse, he had given her something, not expecting anything in return. She was thinking as hard as she could about what she could get him. She had to get him something. She just couldn't figure out anything that could be good enough for him. It had to be something special, something she knew he would like, but not too monotonous. Like she could get him ramen, he would love that, but he had plenty in his house already. She got up and looked through the things into her room, until she stumbled upon something in her closet, something she hadn't seen in a long time. It was what she was looking for. She held up to the light to get a better look at it. This is what she would give to Naruto-kun. It had been their last day training. Hinata had gotten a hang of the Juken arrow. She was able to shoot it rapidly now. The required speed of the spinning was coming much easier to her now. Naruto timed that if she used both hands she could shoot 2 Juken arrows per second. And of course they had worked out and gone through combat maneuvers. They had to prepare themselves mentally and physically. It was already dark when they left the training posts, and now they had stopped at her front gate. They stood awkwardly. Naruto-kun was silent and not saying anything. He was usually the first to say goodbye, and now he was hesitating for some reason. Hinata was about to turn to go and forget about giving him her present, when she suddenly realized something. This was her last day with Naruto-kun that would be in general peace. When the Chunin exams began she wasn't going to be able to focus on her feelings for him, but doing what she had to do to pass the exam and to keep them both alive. She froze at that thought. Genin died during the exam. There was no guarantee that neither of them would be hurt, or even killed. She froze at that thought. Naruto-kun dying was almost too much for her to bear thinking about. Something in her seemed to turn on. Tears began to form in her eyes. Naruto saw the tears beginning to leak from Hinata-chan's eyes. Hinata-chan, what is it? Did I say do something? Hinata suddenly jumped at him, throwing her arms around his neck and pressing her face against his neck. He staggered back a step from the force the impact. She was sobbing in his arms. He hated it when she cried. He slowly put his arms around her. Hinata-chan, what's wrong? She was silent for so long he didn't think she was going to answer. But then he heard a soft whisper against his neck. Please. Naruto frowned. Huh? Hinata's tears began to flow more freely. Please Naruto-kun, don't die on me. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, realization at why Hinata-chan was crying dawning upon him. He slowly closed his arms and held her against him, burying his face against his hair. I won't die, Hinata-chan. I won't leave you, I swear it. I swear it on my blood, I'll never leave you ever. Hinata began to cry more, sobs racking her body. She couldn't help it. So many emotions were swimming inside of her. Fear, sadness, anxiety, embarrassment, and amazingly happiness. She believed him. He was telling the truth. He wasn't going to leave her ever. Naruto-kun, I love you. She couldn't bring herself to form the words, when more than ever this was the perfect time. Naruto sensed her distress. It's okay, Hinata-chan. I'm here. I'll always be here. Just remember that. Hinata's tears began to slow and finally stop. He would always be there, he said, and she believed him. She would get another chance to tell him. She had to have another chance. Naruto pulled her away from him so that he could look her in the eyes, and for the first time he realized how beautiful her eyes were. They weren't white like he originally thought, but a pale lavender. She's so beautiful. Naruto realized what he was thinking and blushed, causing Hinata to blush as well. Hinata turned away and reluctantly stepped from his arms. It felt like she was tearing out her own heart. Thank you, Naruto-kun. You didn't have to be promised though. Naruto frowned and grabbed her hands, bringing her closer again. She stared up into his eyes with a mixture of shock and fear. I meant what I said, Hinata-chan. Neither of us is going to die. I swore it, and I always keep my promises, cause that's my ninja way. Hinata felt herself smile and nod, confidence flooding back into her. Everything would be okay. Together they would make sure of it. I have something for you, Naruto-kun. I didn't get you a gift like everyone else when you came back, so I got you one now. She reached into her jacket pocket and gave him a small neatly wrapped box. The wrapping paper was white with a pale lavender bough wrapped around it. Naruto smiled and began to open the present. It's not much, I know, but I hope you like it. The last was a barely audible whisper. I love it, Hinata-chan. No one's ever gotten me anything like this before. Naruto was holding up a thin gold chain, with a small round and silver locket. Naruto looked at the locket with interest. Does it open? Hinata shook her head. And no, my grandmother made it for me. She said it would only open when the person who wore it was in dire need. It never opened for me, maybe it will for you someday. Naruto stared at the necklace with new wonder. Wow, thanks Hinata-chan. No one's given me something from their family before. I'll make sure I take good care of it. He then unclasped it, and put it on around his neck and tucked it inside his shirt. That's probably the best gift I got, Hinata-chan. Thank you. Naruto smiled and blushed. Hinata smiled too, making Naruto blush even more. She really was pretty beautiful when she smiled. Meet me at my place tomorrow, so we can walk to the exam together? Hinata smiled. The 8 am right? Naruto nodded 8 sharp. I'll see you then, okay? Hinata nodded, but before she turned to go, Naruto impulsively reached out and gave her a quick hug. Good night, Hinata-chan. He then released her and walked to his house. Hinata stood there in shock watching Naruto until he disappeared into the night. Then a warm joy began to fill her like small stream began to flow in the spring. She walked into her house and to her room. Neji saw Hinata in the hallway as she entered her room. She was smiling and walking as if she were moving through a dream. Neji smiled knowingly. Now if only he could be so brave. Naruto took a hot shower and lay in his bed, ramen bowls from that night's dinner stacked up on the floor at the foot of the bed. All the time one thought was going through his head, what had happened only a couple of hours before. Hinata-chan and him hugging, and his promise to her, he would keep that promise no matter what. Naruto put his hand around the locket Hinata-chan had given him. The only thought going through his head now was an image of those pale lavender eyes looking up into his. He realized the more he let the thought run through his head, the more he didn't want to stop thinking about it. Alright boys and girls, calm down. Hatake Kakashi stood in the middle of the exam room, surveying all the genin that had made it there without being led astray. He was relieved to see both Naruto and Hinata. Of course it wasn't hard to find them. Naruto was not only one of the tallest, but who could miss that shock of blonde hair? Hyuga Hinata stood next to him. He noticed how Naruto stood closer to Hinata than someone else normally would. Kakashi smiled to himself. Looks like Naruto had made a new friend while training for the past week. Kakashi tore his gaze from the two and addressed the rest of the genin in the room. He had volunteered to be the Jounin instructor during the written part of the quiz. He told himself it was because he had never done a Chunin exam before, but he knew what the truth was. It was because one of his own students was going to be taking the exam this time around. He wanted to keep an eye on Naruto. The last time he had already lost one of his students, he wasn't going to let it happen again. Everyone look at the seating chart and find your places. Those not seated within the next minute will be disqualified. The room turned into a scene of chaos as all the genin rushed towards the walls to look at the seating charts pinned up to the wall. Kakashi grinned inwardly. Maybe he should have given them 5 minutes. Naruto almost panicked, until he saw Hinata using her Byakugan. She would be able to see the charts without having to move. Naruto smiled, quick thinking, and to think he was going to try barreling through the crowd. Hinata couldn't believe it. She knew her Byakugan was working just fine, but the charts said that Naruto's seat was 15A, and hers was 16A. They were going to sit right next to each other, just like in their first exam 3 years ago. She had expected to not be able to sit next to Naruto-kun, or anywhere near him for that matter. She was elated. They only had a few seconds left though. She did the first thing that came to mind. She grabbed Naruto's hand and began to drag him. This way, Naruto-kun. Naruto found himself being dragged to his seat by the smaller Hinata. She pointed to his seat while blushing for some reason. As he sat, he was about to turn to her and tell her to get to her seat when she sat right next to him. His eyes widened in surprise. Are you sure, Hinata-chan? Hinata nodded, keeping her eyes on the desk in front of her. It is what the seating chart said. Naruto was elated as well. Alright. Just like last time, we are so going to kick ass in this, aren't we? Hinata looked up and smiled. She felt a small bit of relief at the fact that he wanted to sit next to her, but a small part of her said that she already knew that he wanted to. She frowned at that thought. How would she know that? Kakashi surveyed the room. Only 3 hadn't made it to their seats. They were the ones who had tried to bull rush their way through the other genin to get a look at the charts. They were disqualified. 2 leaf and a stone nin. Kakashi didn't lie. There were now only 42 students left. Perfect. Kakashi pulled out his own copy of the chart and began to check off the genin sitting at their desks. Amazingly, all of them made it to the correct seats. Alright kiddies, just to inform you, your seating arrangement was completely random, and there's a little surprise for you at the end that has to deal with that. Anyway, before we begin the test and all that no cheating that I explained earlier, we have a surprise visit from the Hokage. Tsunade was instantly relieved when she entered the exam room. There was Naruto, and sitting to his left was Hinata. Tsunade smiled to herself mischievously. She could be caught, and the entire exam could be called off and held in one of the other countries in the next 6 months. But that's what gambling was all about, and lately, ever since she met Naruto, she had been betting on other things rather than money, and winning more often than not. It had taken a bit of effort, but nothing the 6th Hokage of Konoha could handle. Altering the seating arrangement so that Naruto and Hinata sat next to each other was nothing compared to some of the things she had done in the past. Now she just had to pray that she wasn't caught. Welcome Leaf Genin and Genin from the other hidden villages. Whether this your first time, or your 10th, I wish you the best of luck. As you know, the Chunin exam receives slight alterations to the rules every year, so expect the worst. You'll be better prepared and able to deal with the challenges you will be facing. Again, my best wishes, I will be watching all of your progress. With that she looked meaningfully at where Naruto and Hinata sat and turned to go. Kakashi noticed Tsunade's smile and gaze before she left and looked up to see Hinata and Naruto sitting next to each other. He couldn't believe that he had missed that while checking the list. She didn't, but Kakashi had worked for Tsunade-sama for 3 years now. He knew her antics quite well, from being the butt of some of her jokes and deals. She did, Kakashi sighed. Well, might as well not stop the exam now that it had started. He secretly wished Naruto the best of luck. Alright. Begin. Naruto didn't understand why Oba-chan had looked at him like that. What did she mean that we're going to be new surprises? Naruto stopped thinking about it when Kakashi-sensei yelled for them to begin. He looked meaningfully at Hinata-chan. They already knew they were supposed to cheat and had worked out a strategy beforehand. Now that they sat right next to each other, it would make things 10 times easier. About 10 minutes into the test, giving enough time for some of the students to answer the questions, Hinata activated the Byakugan. She looked through everything around her while only focusing on her own paper. She found one of them. Shikamaru was wearing a long robe and straw hat to hide his features. He knew the answers of course, but he had to make it seem like he was actually trying. So he sat for 5 minutes at a time before answering each of the 10 questions, giving him just enough time to finish at the end. There was no hidden 10th question, like there was for him 3 years ago when he became a Chunin. This was his second time volunteering for the Chunin exam, to hide among the genin and answer questions correctly in order to aid the genin in their information-gathering skills. Hinata had found one of the helpers. Better yet, it was Shikamaru. He would answer the questions perfectly. She signaled Naruto-kun by tapping her pencil on her lips as if she were deep in thought. Naruto saw the signal from the corner of his eye and smiled inwardly. She had tapped 3 times, which meant she found one of the exam helpers and that he was Jounin. Perfect. Naruto sealed under his desk and whispered softly, handcuff jutsu. An invisible band of his chakra attached itself from his right hand to Hinata-chan's right hand, melding perfectly with the chakra in the armbands she wore. Naruto gave the signal by scratching his head. Hinata saw it easily. They were all set. She began to write down Shikamaru's answers as she watched him from 5 seats behind her. Naruto's hand bonded with hers, with his handcuff jutsu, mimicked every movement. Naruto really didn't have to do much. It was Hinata-chan doing all the work actually. He just let his hand be maneuvered by hers like a puppet. That's how he came up with the handcuff jutsu, from talking with a hermit puppet master while traveling with Erosenin. Naruto had learned how to make chakra from his hands attached to something and move it around. He had never gotten farther than the rudimentary basics, but it was enough for him to come up with this jutsu. Hey, he had even kicked Lee-san's ass with it. When the hour rang, Kakashi called for everyone to turn their papers over. Kakashi surveyed the room. There were 40 students left. Only 2 had been caught cheating enough to disqualify them. Wow, this is a pretty good group so far. Kakashi was happy at the fact that both Naruto and Hinata were still there. Alright children, now that that's over, I have some news. First, the papers will be collected and scanned. Please wait a few moments for your scores to come back. The papers were quickly gathered by a Chunin and brought to a machine that he fed the papers into one by one. It took about 15 minutes for all of the tests to go through, and then it spat out one sheet of paper which Kakashi grabbed and began to read. His eyes widened. All of them had passing scores. This group of genin really were good. Not bad. Kakashi looked up. You'll all be happy to know that the rest of you remaining have passed. There were whoops of joy and sighs of relief. Kakashi waited patiently for the noise to die down. Alright, now for the other part of my news. Kakashi brought both of his hands closer together, motioning everyone to move closer to the center. Hinata and Naruto did not have to move. They were already seated next to each other, and directly in the middle. Alright, I can tell that many of you are not enjoying being this close to someone you don't know. Well, get used to it, cause all odd-numbered chairs. Your partner is to your right. Everyone in even-numbered chairs, vice versa. Complete silence, answered Kakashi as realization dawned on the genin in the exam room. Then there was a sudden explosion of yelling and protests. Kakashi sighed. He knew this was going to happen, but it was still annoying. Naruto quickly looked at his chair number, 15A, an odd number. He turned to Hinata-chan on his left. Joy and relief painted both of their faces. They had expected to be partners anyways. But if it wasn't for their luck at being sat next to each other, they would have been paired with someone else. Naruto realized how close he had come to not being able to keep his promise to Hinata-chan. And so he hugged her. Hinata was relieved as well. She didn't know what she would have done if she had been stuck with someone else. When Naruto-kun hugged her, she still blushed, but instead of going stiff as a board, like she usually did, she hugged him back. Just this once, allowing the happiness and relief flood through her. She really didn't know what she would have done if she wasn't with her Naruto-kun. Kakashi waited until the yelling finally died down into grumbling and semi-silence before speaking again. I know that many of you expected to perform the second part of the exam with your teammates that you came with, but if you didn't notice, we were excusing only one genin at a time from the exam, instead of the whole team like what is normally done. You can blame me for this arrangement because it was my idea. But just remember, we are testing you on how well you will perform as a team, and throwing you into two-man teams with a total stranger will test you at how well you adapt to new and unexpected situations. Of course, some of you are with someone you may already know, while others are thrown in with someone from a different village. All I have to say is this: deal with it. If you don't like it, quit. And with that he turned to go. He stopped at the door and looked over his shoulder. Meet all of you at Area 44, aka the Forest of Death, in 1 hour. Oh, and as a rule, you can't stab your partner in the back, or else you're immediately disqualified. See ya. Naruto was still hugging Hinata-chan after Kakashi left. He slowly released her and gave an embarrassed smile. For some reason he didn't want to let go of her. Come on, you heard Kakashi-sensei. We got to meet up at the forest in an hour. Let's get going. They had all gathered at the front of the walled-off section of forest, all 22-man teams. Kakashi was there explaining how that this time there would only be 3 days to get to the center tower, how you couldn't open the scrolls or else you were disqualified, and that there would some new surprises on the way. Naruto didn't like the sound of that, but there was no way he was backing down. Especially with Hinata-chan there, he had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. Many of the genin were dismayed at learning that their numbers would be cut in half at the least. Only a max of 10 teams could make it to the finals, and not all of them would make it probably. Naruto was expecting it. It's what made it so much more interesting after all. Naruto grinned with his old confidence and determination. He was getting excited just standing here thinking about it. Each team began to take turns walking behind a screen in order to receive one of the 2 scrolls needed to enter the tower, the Earth and Heaven scroll. Each team only had one of the 2, and the only way of getting the other was defeating another team that hopefully had it. Naruto's eyes widened. There were 3 sound nins among the genin that had made it this far. They were all male. 2 of them were on one team, and the other was on a team with a grass nin. Naruto felt his hands clench into fists, his teeth grinding. Those bastards. They had to know something about Sasuke's whereabouts, and where the hell he could find that damn Orochimaru. As the 2 teams with the sound nins passed through the screen and received the scrolls, Naruto nudged Hinata-chan softly and nodded towards the 2 teams. She caught the signal and activated her Byakugan. She had also noticed the sound nins and Naruto-kun's agitation at seeing them. The sound were the ones who had hurt Naruto-kun and his friends. She suddenly felt something she had never felt before: hate. They had hurt Naruto-kun during his last Chunin exam. They were men of that Orochimaru monster. They were here to take her Naruto-kun away from her. They both have her scrolls. Naruto looked down in surprise at the grim determination he had just heard in Hinata-chan's voice. He smiled at her. We can take them, Hinata-chan. You and me together, we're unstoppable. Hinata-chan blushed and smiled at his words. He loved it when he got her to smile. He had to find other ways to make her smile like that. It was finally their turn to go through the screen. Kakashi was behind the screen handing out scrolls. He looked meaningfully at both Naruto and Hinata. I wish the both of you the best of luck. And Naruto. Naruto looked up in acknowledgement. You noticed the 3 sound nins, yes? Naruto nodded slowly, his eyes going hard. Be wary, Naruto. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I think I need to tell you. There haven't been any sound nins in the Chunin exams ever since you left 3 years ago. Then all of a sudden when you come back the Sound Village decides to register. I assume you're catching my drift. Naruto nodded. I'll be careful, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked at them a moment more before heading them their scroll. Naruto looked at it for a second before putting it in his pouch. A heaven scroll. Perfect. Naruto and Hinata stood in front of their gate, their entrance to Area 44, simply known as the Forest of Death. They were waiting for it to open. You ready for this, Hinata-chan? Hinata looked into the eyes of the man she loved and told herself she would protect him, and in order to protect him she had agreed with him about tracking down the sound nins. She realized she had to destroy them in order to keep her Naruto-kun safe. Kakashi's words echoing through her thoughts. 3 years since the Sound has entered the exam and now Naruto returns and they come back? They wanted Naruto-kun. She would do everything in her power to make sure they never got their hands on him. She nodded. Hi, I am ready, Naruto-kun. Naruto was surprised by this new Hinata-chan. He had only seen her like this once before, when she had exploded the balloon that one training day several days ago. He wondered what was driving her to be so determined. Naruto grinned. She was strong. Together they would show the world what trash could really do. A red light above the gate began to blink, and the massive twin gates opened enough to allow both of them through. They almost seemed to disappear as they charged ahead into the forest. Hinata was taking the lead, using her Byakugan to its full extent in an attempt to find any trace of the sound means. It had been 7 hours and they hadn't even found trace of another team. They weren't being followed or led on. Her Byakugan could see everything in a 359-degree sphere, and she swept her head from side to side in order to make up for the blind spot behind her neck. Her Byakugan had improved because of their training together, and she could see out to the full range of her Jukin arrow, 100 yards. No, they were definitely alone, and the sky was turning a deep purple color as started to become night. Naruto was frustrated. Why weren't all the teams around? He knew it wasn't Hinata-chan's fault, but they hadn't even found another team yet. Naruto looked at the sky, noticing the lengthening shadows. Naruto knew that the Byakugan didn't allow one to see in the dark. It didn't have night vision among all the things it could do, and he knew without it they would never find another team at this rate. Hinata-chan. Hinata looked over her shoulder. Even though she didn't have to, Hinata-chan, we need to stop for the night. You can't see at night, and we're pretty much lost without your Byakugan. Hinata blushed but agreed. Oh, okay, Naruto-kun, he was right. They were tired and hungry from not resting all day, and she couldn't see at night any more than she could without the Byakugan. So they stopped in a little alcove created by 2 monstrous roots of an ancient oak tree. Hinata had never seen trees as big as these outside the forest of death. The roots themselves were at least 10 feet tall. Their little camp that Naruto-kun had set up was well hidden. They had eaten and Naruto-kun had given encouragement, stating that tomorrow was a new day. Hinata smiled. He was always so confident, never doubting himself. She wished she was like that, at least sometimes. They were about to lay down to sleep, when all of a sudden something completely unexpected happened. It began to snow. Naruto frowned at the little flakes of ice. So this is what Kakashi-sensei meant by new surprises. Worse, it was getting colder and fast. They hadn't packed winter gear. All they had was a blanket that Naruto had let Hinata-chan use to make her bed. He began to shiver uncontrollably as the temperature quickly dropped below freezing. Hinata wasn't much better off. Matter of fact, she was worse. She was turning blue on the lips and her complexion was getting pale. She was shivering without control. She was going to get hypothermia soon if she didn't get warm. Even the chakra-fueled fire was being put out by the cold. No. Naruto saw Hinata-chan suffering. They were going to die if they didn't get warm somehow, and the snow was beginning to pile up inch by inch as the snowfall became more furious. He wasn't going to let it end this way. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. He acted purely on impulse. There was only one way to get them warm, and he would do anything to keep Hinata-chan safe. He realized that deep down he truly would do anything to keep the lavender-eyed girl safe from harm. It gave him new purpose and strength. Hinata was holding herself, trying desperately to get warm, when Naruto-kun stood up and grabbed his blanket he had given her. He walked over as he put the blanket around his shoulders. She thought he was just trying to get warm when he suddenly reached down and picked her up in his arms, covering both of them. Hinata turned pink at the fact that he was holding her bridal style, both of them draped in the blanket. She realized he was using their closeness and the blanket to keep both of them warm. And he was warm. She was still shivering, and acting out of instinct rather than thought, she buried herself against him, wrapping her arms around him and trying to get as close as possible. She realized that they were horizontal and about 100 feet in the air. Naruto-kun was walking up the tree to get away from the snow. She was so cold, he let her snuggle as close as she wanted to him. She needed to get warmer, and they needed to get off the ground before they were buried in the snow, so he began to walk up the tree they had been camped under. When he finally found a branch that was wide enough to sit on without fear of falling off and had enough leaves above it to block most of the snow, he sat down his back to the tree, and was about to put Hinata-chan down as well and give her the blanket when he saw that she was asleep in his arms and curled up against him. She had stopped shaking and was now very warm. Naruto couldn't help himself. He touched her peaceful face lightly with his fingers, brushing back a strand of hair that covered her face, causing her to sigh and snuggle closer against him. He was breathing hard, his heart hammering. What the hell was wrong with him? Hinata-chan was just sleeping, nothing to get worked up about. He then noticed the blanket had slipped, and Hinata-chan was frowning and beginning to shiver in her sleep. Screw it. Naruto pulled the blanket back over them, covering his head with it, and making a sort of tent for Hinata-chan. He then wrapped his arms as far as they could go around her, which happened to be farther than all the way, and rested his head against hers, letting her slow breathing and soft heartbeat lull him into a world of dreams. The sun hit her face, causing her to open her eyes reluctantly. She had been having the most amazing dream. She then looked up to be confronted by the fact that she was face to face with a very blonde and sleeping ninja, that she was in his arms and they were both completely covered by a blanket. Hinata realized it hadn't been a dream. She snuggled back into her bit of Naruto's shoulder, and was seriously considering going back to sleep when she remembered where she was and why she was there. The Chunin examined the forest of death. Hinata looked around her and realized that all the snow from last night had melted, and now it was fairly warm actually. It had been a jutsu that was used over the forest. Some surprise. Hinata couldn't get out of Naruto-kun's arms, though she really didn't want to. But she reached up anyway and stroked the blonde's face, her palm lightly brushing the whisker marks. And Naruto-kun? Wake up please. He slowly but surely opened his eyes, his sky blue eyes looking sleepily into hers. She felt her heart skip a beat at how close his face was to hers. "Good morning, Hinata-chan. Are you feeling okay?" She nodded. She was feeling better than okay actually. She was feeling like she was in seventh heaven at the moment. Naruto rubbed one of his eyes sleepily and set her down in front of him. "That's good to hear. I was really worried about you last night." He then let out a monster of a yawn and stretched his entire length. Hinata held her breath. She couldn't help but let her eyes wander over his body as he tensed and stretched every muscle. She could feel herself turning very pink all over, and that heat was beginning to spread through her body again. She quickly averted her eyes, embarrassed with herself for staring. Naruto didn't seem to notice though. He stood up and pulled Hinata-chan up with him. "Come on, we only got 2 more days to go. We still need to find that other scroll. Here, eat this." He handed her a red pill. It was a soldier pill, and pulled one out for himself. "Kiba gave them to me before we left for the exam yesterday. He said we might need them." Hinata nodded. With the soldier pill she could go on for 3 days straight without stopping, resting, or even eating. After they had eaten their pills and allowed themselves to get used to the feeling of endless energy given by the pills, they jumped into the forest, heading towards the center of the forest, keeping an eye out for any other teams, especially ones that had a sound nin or two in them. It didn't take long. It had only been an hour since they had set off when Hinata spotted activity straight ahead. "I found them, Naruto-kun." Naruto looked up in surprise. "Which ones are they?" Hinata frowned as she made her Byakugan only focus in front of them, effectively increasing its range. It's the sound nin that was paired with the one formed the grass village. They still only have 1 scroll. Naruto grinned. This was it. He was either going to get answers from this follower of Orochimaru or he would defeat him. Either way they needed that scroll. "Alright, Hinata-chan. Let's do it." They sped up and began to close the distance between them and the other team. The other team apparently noticed they were being followed soon after they were discovered by Hinata. But Naruto didn't care. He wasn't trying to hide his presence. Hinata and him jumped through some bushes to find themselves in a clearing that was about 50 feet wide. The tree's branches were so long though that they cast the entire area in leafy shade. The 2 nins were already there waiting for them. The grass nin was tall and thin. He had long straight hair pulled up in a ponytail. He wore nondescript robes with a rope belt, and his forehead protector covering his nose and mouth. On his back though was the largest scythe Naruto had ever seen. The blade itself was at least 5 feet long, and as black as night. The sound nin wore gray robes and the customary purple belt often worn by sound nins that served Orochimaru directly. His forehead protector covered his entire head, the metal plate over his eyes, leaving only his nose and mouth exposed. The sound nin spoke. "Uzumaki Naruto, I never thought that I would have the pleasure." He sneered. "You are wondering why I'm here with my brothers, yes?" He had a very deep voice that seemed to echo like he was inside a cave or something. Naruto only glared back at him. He and Hinata-chan had already gone into their fighting stances. Naruto was ready to jump at a moment's notice, but he needed to know why the sound nin was here. "Why are you here? Did Orochimaru tell you to come? And if so, where is Sasuke?" The sound nin chuckled, a very disturbing sound. "Yes, Orochimaru-sama sent us, and yes, I know where the Uchiha child is. He is Orochimaru now." Naruto almost instantly went numb as what he was told began to sink in. No. It was too late. No. He had failed Sasuke. He was already the Snake Sanin's vassal. No. The numbness instantly went away. "You're lying. I won't believe it." He now felt anger and rage bubbling inside him. What if it was true though? What if it really was already too late? His anger began to die, being replaced by a sense of hopelessness. When he felt Hinata-chan's hand on his arm, he looked at her with a surprised look. He could feel the concern emanating from her eyes. "Why you can't give up, Naruto-kun? Sasuke-san is still out there somewhere." Naruto felt the hopelessness slip away under that pale lavender gaze. She was right, he had made 2 promises, one to find Sasuke, one to always be by Hinata-chan. He intended to keep those promises. This was his nindo, his ninja way. The sound nin saw the look of determination in the blonde ninja's eyes. He grimaced. "So you still want to fight, huh? Good, because Orochimaru-sama's orders were to kill you the first chance we got. That's why me and my brothers are here. Prepared to die, Uzumaki." The grass nin looked calmly at the scene before him. "I don't know what your differences are, and frankly I don't really care." He turned to the sound nin. "We need the other scroll, they might have it, so let's stop this stupidity and finish this quickly." The sound nin nodded with a wicked grin on his face. "I couldn't have said it better myself." And with that they charged. Naruto and Hinata braced themselves. The grass nin came to the front, unhitching his scythe from his back and then swinging it, putting his entire body into it. Black flames erupted from the scythe in an arch that raced towards Naruto and Hinata. Naruto grabbed Hinata and rolled just in time, as the black flames went whizzing by and exploded in the trees about 10 feet behind them. The blast pushed them forwards, causing them to stumble. The sound nin then opened his mouth and screamed. The entire area in front of him was ripped with sonic waves of energy. Naruto jumped in front of Hinata, putting his back to the blast, and took it full on. HHHH. The air rippled with the force of the sonic energy, and Naruto fell forward into Hinata's arms, his back smoking and bloody from the blast. Hinata was afraid he was seriously hurt or worse, dead. But then he moved his head and winked at her. He was okay. She got up, she had to distract them for Naruto-kun, he had a plan. She began to spin the chakra in her palms. The Sound Nin snorted, "Ha, I know all about the Byakugan girl and your Jukin. I don't have to worry about your pathetic attacks as long as I'm not in close quarters with you." She glared at them, she hated them, they had hurt Naruto-kun not only physically but emotionally, and they intended to kill him. She was having none of it. The Sound Nin and his teammate were laughing at her, as she stood there glaring at them. She thrust her hands forward, twin blasts of blue chakra emanating from her palms. The Sound Nin stopped laughing, that was it. A little bit of fireworks. The Sound Nin began to laugh again and turned to his teammate. "Go ahead and kill her, I've already finished off the other piece of trash." The Grass Nin grinned and lunged forward. Except his knee suddenly bent in the wrong direction and he stumbled onto one knee. The Sound Nin's eyes widened, "What the hell? But I thought." Hinata grinned, "Don't act like you know who I am. Don't ever underestimate me," she screamed, vaguely aware that was what Naruto-kun always said. The Sound Nin took a step back, fear apparent on his face, and one of his knees popped and bent in the wrong direction like the Grass Nin. She had hit them perfectly. Water gathering jutsu. The yells seemed to come from everywhere around them as giant ball of water, 20 feet wide, began to form above their heads. The two Nin looked around trying to find out where the voice had come from. Wah? Then the Sound Nin saw that where the Uzumaki brat had been was no longer occupied. "What? But I killed you! There's no way you could have survived that blast." He was screaming at the air. Naruto's voice floated to them from the trees. "Never underestimate me." Oil transmutation jutsu. The water ball turned murky and then black. It had turned into a giant floating ball of oil. Naruto suddenly appeared from above, landing in front of Hinata-chan. Grand fireball jutsu. Flames erupted from Naruto's mouth and lit the giant ball of oil on flame. He then turned to the two Nins. "Trash are we? This is your last chance. Tell me where Sasuke is or I'll destroy you." The Sound Nin chuckled, "I already told you, Sasuke is Orochimaru-sama." Naruto glared furiously. Wrong answer. He then performed at least 20 hand seals in rapid succession, ending with Tiger. "This is my own combo that I came up with. I hope you too like it cause you're about to experience it firsthand." Firestorm of the Armageddon jutsu. Nothing happened. The Sound Nin began to laugh. "That's it? That's your great combo?" Naruto had grabbed Hinata's hand and was running with all his speed. "Come on, Hinata-chan, we have to get to some cover." The giant fireball began to rumble, and the surface began to ripple. The rumble began to grow like 1,000 beating drums until finally it was a deafening roar and the surface was pulsating madly. Naruto pulled them behind a boulder just in time. A tendril of flame shot out of the hovering sphere. It was at least 5 feet wide and swirling like a tornado of flame. It struck the ground, just missing the two injured Nins, leaving a crater in the ground that had turned the soil and sand to glass from the intense heat and pressure. The two Nins began to clumsily run away. More and more tendrils began to shoot out of the sphere in random directions, coming faster and faster, cutting wide swaths of ash and destruction through the surrounding forest. The tendrils were almost constant now, and the rock which Naruto and Hinata were hiding behind had been blasted several times already. Hinata could see with her Byakugan the two Nins trying to escape the flames, but because she had injured their knees they were tiring quickly and having a harder time dodging the mini tornadoes of fire as they came at them faster and faster. Finally one went down, then a split second later the other. They had both been engulfed by the flames and completely incinerated. The onslaught lasted another 15 minutes before the fire ran out of oil for fuel, and the jutsu finally died down with one last tornado blast into the air. After about 5 minutes of absolute silence, Naruto and Hinata slowly and shakily got up from behind what was left of their shelter and began to walk back to the clearing. Hinata was clinging to Naruto, his arm around her shoulders and his other hand holding her arm. She was frightened. How did you do that, Naruto-kun?" Naruto looked down at her and saw the frightened look on her face. He tightened his arms around her, holding her closer. "Don't worry, you're safe." Hinata looked up into those sky-blue eyes and believed. She smiled weakly and nodded her head. Naruto smiled back. "Ero-sennin taught me that. It's a forbidden jutsu, and he said that I should only use it when I really had to. I guess it was a little bit of overkill, huh?" Hinata nodded meekly. "I think it was. It was amazing though, Naruto-kun. Why, you've gotten a lot stronger." Naruto almost looked like a kid again when he grinned at the compliment, except for the fact that he was a lot taller. "Thanks, Hinata-chan. Come on, let's see if we can find that damn earth scroll they had. Those things are supposed to be indestructible." And with that he grabbed her hand and began to lead her around the clearing in search of the scroll. She tightened her grip on his hand and walked beside him as they searched the ground. It didn't take long. Naruto spotted the black scroll among a pile of ashes that made a vague outline of a human. As Naruto slowly pulled the scroll from the ashes and brushed it off with trembling hands, he was hit with what he had just done. He had killed. For the first time in his entire life, he had killed another human being. Hinata saw Naruto-kun stop and tense. "And Naruto-kun?" She watched as Naruto fell to his knees and began to rock back and forth. He was sobbing, the realization that he just took 2 lives for the first time tearing up his insides. He was excited about using his new jutsu, but now he realized what he had done. They may have been out to kill him and he was defending himself, But he had still killed, not once, but twice. They had died by his hands. He had not killed them in one-on-one combat like he always thought he would, but he had destroyed them, completely with a jutsu that could destroy almost anything in its path. Hinata stood horrified. She had never seen Naruto-kun like this. Why? Then the realization came. He had just made his first 2 kills in his entire life. Hinata stood helplessly. What could she do? What could she possibly do to make it better? A strange feeling came over her. She suddenly felt very protective of him. She wanted nothing more than to hold him and protect him from the world. She bent down and put her arms around him. He stiffened for a moment, then wrapped his arms around her, crushing her to him and sobbing into her shoulder. Please. Hinata barely heard his whisper between his choking sobs. What is it, Naruto-kun? I'm here, don't be afraid anymore. I'm here for you. Naruto's body was racked with his sobbing. Please, please, don't leave me, please. Hinata felt her heart tear at the agony in his voice and what he asked of her. She sat down and cradled him in her arms, holding him close and stroking his face. I'm never going to leave your side ever. I swear it. Naruto held her tighter, finding peace in her touch. Tsunade turned from the video screen where she had watched Naruto's and Hinata's fight with the grass and sound Nin. You taught him those jutsus, Jiraiya? She frowned at him. That jutsu Naruto just did. I've only seen it done once before, and that was done by the third, a long time ago. Jiraiya nodded gravely. Yes, I did. He knows more jutsus than I can put a name to. Everywhere we went during our 3 years, Naruto would find the strongest person there and challenge him to a fight. Jiraiya chuckled to himself. Though it was a bit grim, he lost more often than not in the beginning, and each time he saw a new technique used on him, he'd convince the person he challenged to teach him it. He had me teach him almost all the techniques I know. Some of them he can't do because they are still too complicated for him. But ones like the firestorm of the Armageddon jutsu requires very little chakra compared to the amount of damage it can cause. That's why it's a forbidden jutsu. Jiraiya looked Tsunade in the eye, who was overcome by shock. You have to admit he did have use for it. I'm just worried that he'll have to use it more often now. The 2 former teammates stood in silence watching the video screen as Naruto found the heaven scroll and then broke down with the realization of his deed. Tsunade felt a well of concern nearly overwhelm her. Jiraiya heard her sniff and turned to see her wiping tears from her eyes. He's no longer a child anymore, Jiraiya. He's beginning to lose his innocence. Jiraiya smiled knowingly. That's why you put him with the Hyuga girl, didn't you? She'll keep him alive and well, physically and more importantly, emotionally. Tsunade nodded, smiling a little bit. He's in love with her, I can tell, he just doesn't know it yet. Jiraiya nodded. He's in good hands. He paused for a moment. Oh, and another tidbit about our favorite ninja. Tsunade looked up from the screen questioningly. He's mastered it. Tsunade frowned. Mastered what? Jiraiya smiled. The Rasengan. He's mastered all 9 steps. Tsunade frowned, stunned at this statement. But there's only 8 steps. Jiraiya chuckled at that. He found a 9th. And he can do it. He hasn't used it on anything other than inanimate objects. But I fear he may have to use the full power of the Rasengan sooner than hoped. Tsunade was numbed by this tidbit of news. Amazing, his brother would have been proud. Jiraiya looked up meaningfully. His entire family would have been proud. Tsunade. His entire clan would have been. They stood outside the door to the tower. They hadn't run into any other teams while on their way here. It was the 3rd day. They had camped the night before away from the wreckage that Naruto's jutsu had wrought. They had slept in each other's arms again that night, finding peace and warmth with each other. She was never going to leave him. She had promised it, and like him she intended to keep that promise. That morning they had awoken in each other's arms for the 2nd time in 2 days. I'm sorry, Hinata-chan, about yesterday. I didn't mean to break down like that. They were both still wrapped in the blanket, and neither of them had made any move to get up. Hinata touched his face, and looked into his eyes. It's okay, Naruto-kun, really it was. Naruto smiled and hugged her again. Thank you, Hinata-chan, thank you so much for everything. Hinata couldn't believe it. He was thanking her? No, Naruto-kun. Naruto frowned worriedly down at her. Thank you for everything. They held each other then, finding a comfort that they had never felt before. It was many minutes before they parted, pink in the face and smiling to themselves, and began to pack up camp. Now here they were, 3 days of trekking through the forest and braving its dangers. You ready, Hinata-chan? Hinata looked up, remembering this morning and turning pink at the thought. Naruto-kun was back to his original self now. He had told her that it was because of her he had been able to make it through. She felt extremely proud at that statement, and a bit of determination began to form in her chest again. She would never leave him. She would always be there for him whenever he asked. She couldn't help thinking that he had made that exact same promise, and that he also was going to keep it. She looked into those beautiful sky blue eyes and found warmth. The only other people who had ever exuded so much care with just a look were her mother and Neji. Ever since he started looking out for her, she smiled one of those smiles that for some reason made Naruto's heart skip a beat and begin to speed up. For the life of him he had no idea why. Why, yes, Naruto-kun, we are ready. And with that she did the bravest thing she could have done. She grabbed his hand and began to lead them inside the tower. Naruto allowed himself to be pulled along, feeling something warm come over him at the touch of Hinata-chan's hand. Tsunade was right. He was in love. He just didn't know it yet. Naruto and Hinata entered the tower. Knowing what to do already, they opened both scrolls to begin the special summoning. There was a small flash of light and an explosion of smoke. As the smoke cleared, Naruto grinned happily. Iruka-sensei. Iruka grinned back at Naruto. Hey! Naruto! Oh, and of course hello to you too, Lady Hinata. Hinata blushed at the title. I am not a lady. Iruka-sensei. Naruto and Iruka both spoke at the same time. Nonsense. They both looked at each other and began to laugh, causing Hinata to blush even more. Iruka finally stopped laughing. Sadly this the end of the pleasantries. You two are the last to arrive. You worried me for a bit. All the other 9 teams arrived yesterday. Naruto's eyes widened. All 9 teams? Iruka nodded. Yep, it looks like after 3 years we're going to have another preliminary round before the third part of the exam. Alright, come on and follow me, you know where we're going. With that he began to lead them down a hallway and to another room, filled with the other 18 genin. It was the same room where the preliminaries were held during Naruto's last Chunin exam. This was where he had defeated Kiba, probably by pure luck. Naruto turned blushed slightly at that memory. He remembered Lee-san saying something about how luck followed the strong. Maybe he was right. Naruto was enjoying his memories of his and Kiba's fight until he noticed Hinata-chan's obvious irritation. She did not have such good memories of this place. Hinata-chan? Hinata looked up at Naruto. That's when she realized they were both still holding hands and began to blush again. Naruto didn't seem to notice her turning pink. Hinata-chan, don't worry, you're a lot stronger now, and with me to cheer you on you'll definitely win. There's no doubt about it. Hinata smiled, and squeezed his hand to let him know that she was okay. She didn't trust her mouth right then. Naruto looked at her seriously for a moment. Just remember that I'm always here. He pointed to the spot he was standing, by her side, and I'm not leaving it. Hinata had to swallow back her tears. This was not the time to cry right now, even if it was out of happiness. They were now standing among the other genin. She could see the 2 sound nin on the other side of the group, farthest away from them. Naruto was looking at them too. She gripped his hand more tightly, feeling him do the same. The 2 sound nin were staring at them as well. They were broken from their staring contest by none other than Tsunade, the 5th Hokage. Jiraiya stood on her right, Kakashi on her left, and the other Jounin instructors stood to the side. I am impressed by the numbers that have entered the tower. Not all the teams that can make it here usually make it. I am informed to tell you, Yaro-senin. Naruto was jumping up and down, apparently not listening to Tsunade. Did you see me kick the shit out of those 2 with that jutsu you taught me? Tsunade was about to yell at Naruto for being rude when Jiraiya jumped up in front of her. Hell yeah! That was so awesome, Naruto. I knew those 2 didn't stand a chance when I saw you use that huge water-gathering jutsu. Jiraiya suddenly went crashing to the floor, sending spider cracks through the cement. He would awaken several hours later with a migraine and one huge lump on the back of his head, luckily though, without a concussion. Naruto noticed Oba-chan's eyebrows twitching and decided then was a good time to shut up. He saw Hinata-chan with her hand over mouth in an attempt to stop smiling. Naruto gently reached out and moved her hand away. I like it when you smile like that, Hinata-chan, you should do it more often. Hinata looked down at her feet and was turning beet red again. She would have twiddled her fingers as well, except in order to do so she would have to remove her hand from Naruto-kun's. From the corner of her eye she could see Naruto-kun blushing too. Tsunade massaged her temples. Now, if there aren't going to be any more interruptions, she glared threateningly at Naruto, causing him to gulp audibly. We can continue. As I was going to say, there are too many teams left, so for the first time in 3 years we will hold a preliminary round before the start of the third exam. We will hold it right now. The display, she pointed at the wall, will tell us who is fighting who. Now everyone up onto the catwalk. As they all came onto the catwalk, Naruto and Hinata were joined by Kakashi-sensei. I'm glad you made it this far, Naruto. You did well during that fight you had in the forest. Naruto puffed up with the compliments. But don't get too cocky. If you don't win the preliminary rounds you won't be able to see my final surprise. Naruto paused at that. Huh? Another one of your stupid surprises? Yeah, well, don't worry about me or Hinata-chan. Nobody can beat us, right, Hinata-chan? Hinata was toeing the ground in front of her. We have grown a lot stronger, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto smiled. See? We're unstoppable. Kakashi just shook his head, smiling secretly to himself. He didn't doubt Naruto's words. The head display rang and the first fight was displayed. It was a double knockout. Everyone was surprised by this, but even more surprised when the second round was also a double knockout. Kakashi raised his eyebrows in mild surprise. 2 double knockouts in a row, interesting. The third fight involved one of the Sound Nin, Zeke, and a Leaf Genin. Naruto watched closely. He wanted to see what these 2 Sound Nin could do. This one was easy to figure out. He defeated the Leaf Genin with what appeared to be blades of sound energy that he could throw. They left terrible gashes in the Leaf Genin's body. He hadn't stood a chance. Naruto flexed his hands and gritted the teeth. It weren't for the fact he would be disqualified he would have jumped that Sound Nin then and there. He lost his anger as the next fight showed the other Sound Nin, Pulse, fighting a Stone Nin. The Stone Nin could rip up ground with his bare hands and use the rocks as powerful projectiles. But as each rock came at Pulse they would simply explode about 2 feet away from the Sound Nin. He just stood there with his arms crossed, looking eerily like the calm and collected Gaara of the desert. Suddenly the Stone Nin collapsed, gushing blood from his mouth, nose and ears. Naruto couldn't understand it. How did he do it? Did it have to do with sound? Naruto decided that this pulse was the strongest of his three brothers. In the next 4 fights, those who won were a leaf nin who could turn herself into some sort of tree monster that could control plants, a stone nin who could cover himself in stone armor making himself nearly invulnerable, 2 cloud nins, one who wielded a spear of electricity, and the other who channeled electricity through her skin. She just grabbed onto her opponent until he passed out from the electrical shock. Finally it was Hinata's fight. She was worried at first that she would have had to fight Naruto-kun. She would have forfeited that one before he did so that he had a chance to become a Chunin. She was glad now she wouldn't have to. But she was nervous. The last time she fought here she was soundly beaten and badly injured by her cousin Neji. She was fighting a genin from the hidden mist village. Before she turned to go, Kakashi spoke up, "Don't be nervous, Hinata. Just stay focused and you'll do fine." Naruto spoke up, "Kakashi-sensei is right. You can beat him no problem. Just remember that I'm right here. Now go kick some misty ass." Hinata couldn't help but smile at the encouragement. Hinata went down the stairs to the floor. There waiting for her was her opponent. A tall and muscular man. He wore nothing but a pair of black shorts that came to the top of his knees and a pair of sandals with spikes on them. His headband was on his forehead with his dark brown hair done up in spikes. He grinned. Hinata noticed that he had sharpened canines. "I like to eat little girls. I had to kill a lot of them so that I could get here, you know." Hinata's heart began to beat faster. He wanted to kill her. Then she heard Naruto-kun's voice. "Kick his ass, Hinata-chan. Wipe that ugly smirk off his face." Hinata smiled. Naruto-kun would always be there for her, no matter what. The Mist Nin grimaced at the Naruto's words. "Shut up, you ass. You won't be saying that once I'm done with her." He then turned his grin back on Hinata. His grin quickly dropped. She was smiling at him with a dangerous glint in her eye. No girl had looked at him like that before, and those eyes. What the hell was up with that? White eyes. "Who the hell you think you're smirking at, bitch? Fine, I'll kill you quickly and get this over with." Girls usually looked at him with eyes full of fear. But this one, she looked at him like she planned on turning him into fried bacon. He didn't like it. He sealed and yelled hidden mist jutsu. The most basic of the mist village's techniques, but sometimes one of the most useful. The entire area that Hinata stood in was covered in thick fog. The only visible object to the onlookers was Hinata, but then she too was swallowed up. Hinata couldn't help but smile. He didn't know about her Byakugan, and what it could do. She held stock still and silently activated her blood limit. He was coming around behind her hoping to catch her off guard. Hinata waited. Hee. The bitch was scared witless. She was just standing there not knowing what to do. He was directly behind her. He was going to finish this quickly. He charged with a kunai in his hand, planning on stabbing her in the back. He thrust forward when she suddenly sidestepped and he stumbled forward. How? He was moving too slow, obviously thinking she couldn't see him. She easily sidestepped his thrust, causing him to stumble forward and exposing the back of his neck. She gathered chakra into her 2 fingertips and slammed them into the back of his neck, just beneath the skull. He fell limply to the ground and the mist disappeared. What did you do?" He was still conscious but not moving. She answered with contempt in her voice. "I severed the nerves from your brain to your body. You're paralyzed from the neck down. Oh, and you shouldn't have told me that you enjoyed killing little girls, 'cause I made it permanent." He passed out before he was able to call her a bitch. Winner! Hyuga Hinata! Hyuga smiled at the cheering from Kakashi and Naruto, and the other leaf genin that were still conscious. She shakily climbed the steps only to stumble into Naruto-kun's arms. Did I do well?" Naruto laughed and hugged her. "You did awesome, Hinata-chan. Now it's my turn." Saying that, he let go of Hinata and jumped over the rail. Hinata silently wished him luck. Naruto was confronted by a genin from the hidden sand village. Naruto smiled. "So how is that Gaara doing? I haven't talked to him in a while." The sand nin, who was short and wore baggy black clothing that was tied at the waist and joints with white rope, stared blankly at Naruto. "That monster is our Kazekage. My parents say he should be disposed of." Naruto's eyes widened at the news. "Gaara's already Kazekage? I got to get working harder." Naruto's narrowed though at the other words the boy said. "Monster, huh? You don't know anything about Gaara then, 'cause if you did you wouldn't be saying that." The sand nin only looked at him blankly. "I don't really care. I'm just going to beat you now so that I can go on to the 3rd part of the exam and become a Chunin." Naruto's eyes grew angry. This brat wanted to be a Chunin. He acted like he didn't even care. "Fine then, you want this over so bad? Then let's do it." Naruto charged, gathering chakra to his hand Rasengan. He slammed Rasengan into the ground where the sand nin had been causing a small crater. "Shit, he's just as fast as Lee-san." He turned around and charged the sand nin again. This continued on for another 15 minutes, Naruto trying his best to hit the super fast sand nin and never landing a blow. Naruto noticed something though. He stopped for a moment. The sand nin rose a questioning eyebrow. "Why don't you try and hit me back?" Naruto didn't understand. This kid was faster than him and should have been trying to kick his butt. Matter of fact, Naruto wanted him to attack him so he could use his handcuff jutsu on him like he did to Lee-san, but the sand nin merely evaded him, waiting for the last second to dodge and appear behind him about 10 feet away. The sand nin slowly smiled. Naruto thought it looked kinda creepy. "I may be fast, but I'm not very strong. I wouldn't be able to hurt you if I tried. So I just let my opponents tire themselves out and wait until they're too weak to defend themselves before I finish them off. The kid actually chuckled at that. Naruto glared. You're a coward. I can't believe you call yourself shinobi. You can't even stand up for yourself in a one-on-one fight, so you kick your opponent when he's down. You make me sick. The Sannin smile disappeared again. I don't care. Naruto grimaced. Fine. He had a plan. He had used shuriken on the kid already and of course he dodged it. But he noticed he only dodged it at the last second. Naruto ran away from the kid, ran up the wall and jumped into the air. The Sannin only smiled, thinking he was going to attempt another Rasengan. Naruto, however, with his back turned on the Sannin, slipped the Fuma shuriken from his pack, the one Sakura-chan had given him, and opened it. He did some quick seals and whispered something. He did all of this in the span of a second. The Sannin watched as the blonde ninja giant twisted in midair and threw a particularly large shuriken at him. Didn't he know that those kind of attacks were too slow? What an idiot. His eyes widened though when there was a huge shockwave. In the middle of the shuriken's flight there was a giant sonic boom that shook the walls as it instantly sped up past the speed of sound. Because of the speed change it caught the Sannin off guard. He still dodged it. But then the sonic boom hit him, tearing off his right arm and leaving only a bloody stump. Ag. The shuriken blasted through the far wall of the room into the open, circled upward, slowing down, then coming back through the 30-foot hole it created, where it was deftly snatched from the air by Naruto and stored in his pack. Thank you, Sasuke. How did you like my sonic shuriken jutsu? You can run around all you want now, you'll die from blood loss though. The Sannin was holding his bloody shoulder and staring at Naruto with wide eyes. He then promptly fell forward onto his face and blacked out. Winner! Uzumaki Naruto! Naruto stood in the middle of the damaged arena as everyone else who had won came down to stand before the Hokage. Naruto hugged Hinata again when she reached him. Hinata noticed that she was quickly getting used to these hugs she was receiving. She hoped he didn't stop giving them. Tsunade stepped down from the dais in order to address the assembled genin. Well done to those who have made it this far. I must say that your combat skills are up to par, but you'll have to show them off again in the third part of the exam. It will be a tournament that will be attended by many lords and almost the entire Leaf Village. It will be held 1 month from now. Tsunade paused for a moment to allow that to sink in. Many of the first-timers were very surprised. Also, those of you who have taken the third part of the exam before fought in one-on-one battles, this time you will be fighting with a partner. There were some cries of objection against this, most of them saying that they had already done the second part of the exam with partners. Tsunade waited patiently. She was pleased to see that Naruto and Hinata were not complaining. There are 8 of you, so 4 teams, Team 1 and 2 will fight. Then Team 3 and 4 will fight. The 2 winners of those bouts will fight for first place. Tsunade continued to tell them how they may not become Chunin even if they did win, and because one partner became Chunin didn't mean the other did as well. Now I will list off the teams. Team 1, Zeke and Pulse of the Sound Village. Tsunade was surprised. Naruto and Hinata were on Team 4. These were also picked randomly, but she didn't tell them that. It looks like Naruto and Hinata had pure luck on their side this time. Tsunade smiled at that before she addressed the genin again. Now you have 1 month to train and relax. We'll see you at the stadium. Then dismissed. As everyone turned to go, Kakashi noticed the Jounin instructor for the sound pulling his students outside away from the rest of the group. He turned to Naruto and Hinata. You two go ahead, I've got to check out something. Naruto and Hinata both nodded and continued on their way. Kakashi turned to where the sound nins had disappeared and followed them. He found them in a small clearing of trees. He hid himself in some bushes, attempting to stay as quiet as possible. No, you will wait until the tournament to complete your mission. That was the Jounin instructor, one of the students complained. But it would be so much easier if we killed him now, when he least expected it. The Jounin was furious. I said, no, Zeke. That is an order from the Snake Sannin himself. You will wait until the tournament. It will be expected and draw less attention when you finally kill Uzumaki Naruto. Now go. Last time I checked you two had a month to train. Now get out of my sight. Kakashi waited until the 2 genin left before revealing himself. The Jounin seemed unsurprised. Copy Ninja Kakashi, listening in on our little conversation? Too bad you can't do anything about it, since killing is perfectly legal during the tournament. Kakashi noticed that this sound shinobi was dressed like any other sound nin, gray robes and a purple rope belt tied in a bow at the back, with 2 katanas strapped to his back. Kakashi frowned. Yes, too bad, but I must say I do hold a grudge against anyone who targets my students specifically, and to tell you the truth, that's usually enough for me to kill indiscriminately. Kakashi pushed up the left side of his forehead protector, revealing the scarred eye that held his Sharingan. It's enough for me to kill you and violate the rules, to tell you the truth. The sound nin smirked. There will be no fighting today, Hatake Kakashi. Don't worry though, you and I will battle soon enough. Remember my name, I am Decito, and I look forward to killing you personally. And with that he disappeared. Kakashi didn't bother chasing after Decito. If we are going to fight soon, might as well wait until then. At least Naruto already knows about it, he'll be prepared. Kakashi turned to go, wondering what abilities this new adversary had, and what would happen in his new book, given personally to him by none other than Jiraiya-sama, Return to Come Paradise. Come on, Hinata-chan. One more, please. Naruto was trying his best to look pathetic, knowing that Hinata-chan seemed to do what he wanted when he asked nicely. Hinata couldn't help but smile. Naruto-kun, I'm tired. You know you have a lot more energy than me. Naruto stuck out his lip. Just one more? Please? Hinata rolled her eyes and smiled, shaking her head. She knew she was going to be too tired to do anything else the rest of the day. One more, promise? Naruto-kun grinned and stood up. He had gotten down on his knees and held his hand over his heart. I promise. Hinata rolled her eyes again. She knew her muscles were going to give her hell for this. Neji watched from the sidelines. Hinata and Naruto were sparring in the courtyard. This had to be their 6th match in a row so far. Hinata was getting tired, but because of her Byakugan she dodged or blocked almost all the blows. She was hit a couple of times, but Neji noticed that Naruto didn't hit hard like he would against someone else, even if it was just a sparring match. Matter of fact, he barely touched her, just pushing with his fist or foot enough to let her know she was hit, and she did the same back. Neji smiled to himself. Even now, only 4 days away from the tournament, they would never risk hurting each other. Neji was impressed. Hinata had improved immensely the past 3.5 weeks. He was seeing her in action for the first time. She and Naruto appeared to be two blurs moving across the sand of Naruto's courtyard. No one had seen the two since they came back from the first 2 parts of the exam. For the day after, they immediately began to train together. In order to keep anybody from spying on them, they trained exclusively at Naruto's. Hinata would get up at 6 a.m. to go over to Naruto's and would come back late at night so tired she would take a shower and go directly to bed. Neji never got a chance to talk to her. No one did. Naruto locked his gates when Hinata came over to keep out unwanted eyes. Neji was suspicious at first, until he realized that even if Hinata had the courage to do such things, she was in love and it would be her choice, not his, and he had grown to trust Naruto. He wasn't the only one watching them though. Tenten and Lee stood by, while Shikamaru, Chuji, Kiba and Shino watched from the other side of the courtyard. Ino and Sakura sat on the doorsteps of the main building whispering to each other as Naruto and Hinata had their mock battle. Finally they stopped. Hinata had lost this time, making it 3-3 at tie. She realized that Naruto-kun didn't enjoy losing and had wanted one more chance. If she had won, he would have given in. He was a pretty good sport for someone who was so competitive. They were both breathing hard and sweaty. Naruto-kun peeled off his shirt and called out to Lee-san to see if he wanted to spar. Lee-san ended up taking his shirt off too and jumping off the boardwalk, facing Naruto. Naruto looked over his shoulder at Hinata. You go ahead and take your shower. After I'm done messing around with Lee-san, I'll take mine and we can all hang out for a bit. He smiled and turned back to Lee-san. Hinata just stared dumbly. For the past 3 weeks she had only seen Naruto-kun without his shirt on a couple of times. Each time her heart sped up and that heat started to spread through her body. She turned around quickly and headed for the main building where she would take her shower in one of the guest bedrooms on the 2nd floor. She had actually moved some of her stuff into that room, because it was more convenient than having to bring things back and forth from her house to Naruto-kun's. Naruto was the one who had convinced her to do it. It was a pretty good idea, she had to admit. After all, she spent most of her past days at Naruto-kun's. She only used her house to take a shower right before bed and to sleep. She ate all her meals at Naruto's, and even when they weren't training they did what Naruto-kun liked to call their hangout session. Naruto had commented on their first day back how Tsunade-sama had said to relax as well as train, and so they shouldn't train all day. Hinata had taken it at first that she was being dismissed, and she should go home and rest, and was about to go when Naruto had said she should eat at his house. He had plenty of ramen for the both of them, and they could just sit and talk. Hinata was terrified of thought. What was she going to talk about with him? She wanted to though, so she had agreed. And now for the past 6 weeks, they would take breaks at mealtime, sit down in the living room and just talk. It was hard at first. Hinata couldn't think of anything to talk about, so Naruto would just talk about their training at first, and then he would ask her how life was like living in a clan household. He would ask her things like what did she like to do, or what were her favorite things, like color and food. She couldn't help but answer and stutter all the answers at that. But finally after the first week, she had worked up enough courage to ask him what his favorite things were. He had answered immediately, going into detail, especially about ramen. He then said at last that he enjoyed being around her. That's when she had just said screw it, and just started talking about herself. At first she was afraid that Naruto-kun didn't want to hear, but he would ask questions, prompting her to go on. And he did the same. Hinata noticed that gradually, but surely, in those past 3.5 weeks she had lost her stutter when she talked to him. She also met his eyes more often when she talked to him, and she didn't twiddle her fingers when he was around. She began to realize that Naruto-kun not only enjoyed talking to her, but he wanted to talk to her. Just talk and learn as much as possible about her. And so she did the same because she felt that's what she wanted. She really wanted to learn as much about him as well though. So it didn't take much for her to work up her courage and ask him things about himself. She almost never stuttered around him now, except when he did things like hug her or take off his shirt. She couldn't help it. Whenever he did those sort of things she would feel her entire body heat up, and her heart beat faster, causing her to slip back into her stutter for a moment. She wondered sometimes what she would do if she just let that strange heat take over, but she never got far, embarrassed by what it could mean. Naruto-kun had started calling it their hangout sessions ever since the first day. One day, about 2.5 weeks in, Hinata had gotten enough courage to ask Naruto-kun what she thought was a personal question. He had already asked her some pretty personal ones, but considered it different if she asked one. It was night, and the full moon was out. Hinata was going to go home in about a half an hour. She and Naruto-kun were sitting on the sand in his courtyard, under the stars. Hinata had been wanting to ask him, because she had told him about her personal life, like what her family was really like, and how hard it had been living up to her father's expectations all the time. But she had never asked him about what his personal life was like. She didn't want to seem like she was intruding, but she felt like she had to know this. They had been sitting under the stars already for almost an hour when she finally brought herself to open her mouth and ask. And Naruto-kun? Naruto turned to look down at her. Yeah, Hinata-chan? She breathed in deeply. She had taken the first step, best not to back off now. What is it like living alone? Naruto turned his face away to hide expression from Hinata. Why do you want to know that for? He asked softly. Hinata was shocked. He had never asked her a reason before. He had just simply answered, I am sorry. I shouldn't have asked. Naruto turned to look at her. She was shocked at the amount of pain he showed on his face. It's no that, Hinata-chan. I just need to know why you're asking. Hinata took another breath. Because I feel like I need to know. I don't know. Sorry. Naruto shook his head. No, it's okay. I'll tell you, because I think I need to also. Hinata waited patiently. Was his life really that bad? Naruto finally spoke. They all hate me, you know. Hinata's eyes widened. Who? Naruto sighed. Your father, and almost every elder and adult in this village. It's true, I can feel their hatred, especially when they all look at me, their eyes, they're like ice. Naruto took a deep breath. When I was little, I lived in an orphanage. They always told me that someday someone would come and be my parents. Someday I would have a family. Naruto was swallowing now and having a hard time talking. Hinata reached out, but didn't touch him, afraid he would stop. They never came, Hinata-chan. I watched as every kid in the orphanage was chosen for adoption until I was the only one left. I would try my best and be nice to the adults who came by, but they always gave me those looks, those cold looks, and their children mirrored them. They started acting the same way, ignoring me when I came out to play, telling me to go away when I wanted to go with them to the candy store. Even my caretakers tried their best to ignore me when they could. I usually had to get my own food, because my nannies would forget, and I ate in the back of the kitchen because no one would let me sit with them. Finally, my 12th birthday came. No one celebrates it, you know. It was the day the Kyuubi attacked, and the third Hokage gave me my own apartment, and provided me with money so I could buy myself food and clothes. Naruto sniffed and rubbed at something in his eyes. I wasn't as strong as you thought. I am, Hinata-chan. I only acted tough. I told you this at the training post that one day. I know, but it was true. I was afraid that everyone at school would treat me like I was at the orphanage, that I acted like I did to make sure that people at least acknowledged the fact that I was there. I didn't have any friends, not until Irika-sensei, that is. Then all of a sudden I started to get friends. I was suddenly not alone anymore. I wondered it was like having a family, if Irika-sensei was like a father, and Sasuke if he was like a brother. Naruto was rubbing his eyes constantly now and was shaking. Sakura-chan, I wanted her as my girlfriend because she was one of the hardest to get. She was interested in Sasuke. But now I wonder if she's more of a sister now than anything else. Everybody else was there to help me too, and especially you, Hinata-chan. Hinata jerked at the mention of her name. She was so engrossed in his words. And me? She squeaked. Yeah, you made me feel strong again when we talked at the training post that one day. And then when we started training for the first time, you gave me another purpose. And now, I know more about you than anybody else. You're the first person to tell me so much about themselves. I feel like I know you best out of everybody in the whole world. Hinata couldn't believe it. His life had so much pain in it. He then turned to her, smiling weakly. His eyes were red and tears ran down his cheeks. You probably are the person that I know best, Hinata-chan. I don't know what I would have done if it weren't for all of you. I don't know what I would have done if I was still alone. Hinata, abandoning everything her mind was telling her, reached up and cradled his face and then held his head to her shoulder, hugging him like she did that one day in the forest of death. Naruto couldn't hold back anymore. He began to cry into her shoulder without restraint, spilling out his pain for the stars, the moon, and for her to see. After he had finally calmed down a bit, he had just kept his head where it was, which Hinata was grateful for. She didn't want him to move. Hinata-chan? Hinata looked down at him and smiled softly. Yes? Naruto looked up, so their eyes were meeting. I don't know why I'm saying this, other than I think I need to. I can't stop thinking about you. Hinata's heart nearly stopped, and suddenly was beating at 1,000,000 beats a second. I don't know why, but for some reason when I think of you, or when you smile, or when we hug, I'm really, really happy. And that's only one of the feelings. I can't even start to figure out the other ones. But I can definitely tell you that I'm happy when you're around. I don't ever plan on leaving your side, as long as you don't want me to. And I hope that you do the same, because I don't want you to leave. Hinata could feel the tears starting to form. Why, yes, of course I don't want you to leave. And I promised you that I wouldn't leave your side either, remember? And I don't want to leave your side, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled up at her. Thank you again, Hinata-chan. You always seem to know what to say to make me happy. Hinata smiled, forcing back the tears she was about to shed. And Naruto-kun? Naruto looked up again. Yeah? I love you, Naruto-kun, is what she wanted to say. Nothing, just, you make me happy too. Naruto frowned for a moment, but then smiled warmly. That's good, I'm glad I make you happy to Hinata-chan. Naruto decided if she didn't want to tell him then that was okay. Don't you have to go home? Hinata looked down at him. I can stay for a bit longer. Naruto smiled and leaned on her shoulder. Hinata breathed deeply, trying to keep that heat from overcoming her. She didn't get home until much later that night. Hinata smiled at those memories as she walked to the main building and her much-needed shower. She and Naruto had grown closer, especially after their conversation a week ago. They had shared secrets, some she had not even told Neji Nizan before. She never wanted this to end. She wanted to be by Naruto-kun until the day she died. She hoped his promise stayed strong, cause she knew hers would. As she walked past Ino and Sakura on the steps, they got up and followed her inside. Hey Hinata-chan, wait up. Hinata turned around, draping her towel over her shoulders. Why yes? She still stuttered when she talked to other people other than Naruto-kun. Ino walked so she was standing right in front of her and Sakura circled behind her. She was taller than both of them, but they made her seem very small all of a sudden. Ino grinned evilly. So I hear you and Naruto have been hanging out almost non-stop now. Hinata just nodded her head, eyes wide and a little frightened. Sakura giggled behind her. You see, Sakura and I were just wondering, have you two kissed yet? Hinata almost choked from the coughing she had. What makes you say that? Sakura shrugged. Oh well, you two, alone for the past, month now, if you include his first week back. I was just beginning to think that you two were more than just friends, cause I've never seen just friends hug so much. Hinata was stunned. No. It's not like that. Not at all. Ino raised an eyebrow or smiled. Are you saying that you don't want it to be like that? No. I mean, I don't know. Ino raised both eyebrows. Sakura did the same. I see now, you like him a lot, and you can't bring yourself to tell him. Hinata stared mutely at the ground in front of her, knowing she was caught, and preparing herself for the reasons they would tell her not to chase after him. Instead, both girls squealed and began hugging Hinata. Oh my god! We're so happy for you, Hinata-chan. Hinata felt numb. Huh? Sakura held Hinata's shoulders so she could look her in the eye. Ino and I have been talking, and we think you two are perfect for each other. You go girl. I would have said yuck about you liking him 3 years ago when I didn't know him, but now, especially after he somehow got that hot bod of his, you deserve him. Hinata couldn't speak for a moment, she was stuttering so badly. But Naruto-kun he doesn't like me like th that. Sakura and Ino both rolled their eyes as one. Ino spoke up. Trust me Hinata, he likes you, he just doesn't know it yet. All you need to do is tell him how you feel about him and find that he likes you too. Trust me, I can see it. She smiled that evil smile again. Now you go wash up, we don't want to leave our Naruto-kun waiting, do we? Hinata turned pink. Sakura came up and smiled at her warmly. You and Naruto will make such a good couple. If you ever need our help with knocking some sense into him, then let us know. And with that, both gave the lavender-eyed girl warm hugs before they turned to go back out into the courtyard and watch Lee and Naruto's match. Hinata walked numbly to her room and into the shower, thinking about everything that Sakura and Ino had said to her. Halfway through her shower she was smiling to herself, and humming wordlessly. After Naruto finished with his sparring, which ended up with Neji, Kiba and Shuji joining in as well, they all took showers and then everyone was treated to ramen as they sat in the living room talking about things like the Chunin exam, and this year's class of Genin. Hinata was unusually silent, due to the fact that she was blushing so much from the expressions and hand gestures Sakura and Ino threw at her when no one else was looking. The next 3 days passed in much the same way, with everyone spending as much time together as possible at Naruto's house and Hinata and Naruto training. When everyone went home for the night, Hinata would stay late and have their hangout session with Naruto-kun. They mostly talked about the upcoming tournament, but they talked about themselves as well when they veered off topic. The past month was all happy memories for both Naruto and Hinata. They stood on the special balcony where the fighters would stand and wait for their match, each standing next to their partner that they had been training with for last month. Hinata and Naruto held hands, like they did in the tower 1 month ago, reassuring each other with occasional squeezes of the hand. The stadium was full to bursting. People sat on the walls and steps so they could see the fights, for 3 Kages had come from their countries to witness the tournament. In addition to the Hokage, there was the Tsechikage of the Hidden Stone, the Reikage of the Hidden Cloud, and Gaara, the Kazekage of the Hidden Sand. No one knew why he was there since no Sand Genin had made it this far, but he was one of the judges and he had brought a good portion of the Sand Village with him. It was time to begin. The referee and announcer was none other than Hatake Kakashi himself. Teams 1 and 2, step forward. Naruto and Hinata watched as the Leaf and Cloud Nin jumped down off the balcony followed by the 2 Sound Nin, Zeke and Pulse. Kakashi raised his hand when both teams were in their right places. Then he made a chopping motion and yelled begin. The battle was literally over in a matter of moments. The Leaf Genin transformed into her tree form and tried to capture Zeke with her roots. Zeke's sound blades however cut through her roots and consequently her as well. She fell and transformed back to normal, except her normal form had deep and bloody gashes in her side. At the same time the Cloud Nin had thrown his spear of lightning at Pulse. The spear discharged 5 feet away from Pulse, and suddenly the Cloud Nin went down, bleeding from his orifices. The fight was over before it had hardly begun. Winners! Zeke and Pulse. Kakashi kept a wary eye on the 2 sound Nins as they walked back to the balcony. The medics quickly rushed out and gathered the 2 fallen Nins. The crowd was cheering and booing, of course, some liking the fight, others thinking it too short, and others thinking it too brutal. Teams 3 and 4 stepped forward. Hinata and Naruto climbed down and went to their spot, the big stone Nin and the Cloud Kunoichi standing across from them. The stone Nin looked like Chuji, except he was completely bald and his eyes were dark and hard. He wore nothing but his shorts. The Cloud Nin had long silvery hair. Just like her twin brother in the previous fight, she wore short shorts and a tube top, exposing as much of her skin as possible and still being discreet. Kakashi yelled, "Begin!" The stone Nin stepped forward. "Don't worry, I'll handle this. It's just a little girl and some blonde surfer." The Cloud Nin glared at him and screamed, "That wasn't the plan, you idiot." The stone Nin shrugged. "I say save the plan for that Zeke and Pulse. They're definitely stronger than these 2. And with that he performed several hand seals and yelled at the top of his deep voice, "Impenetrable armor of rock and stone." And then he charged. As he ran, earth and rock ripped itself from the ground and flew towards him, attaching to his skin and melding to his body, so that he looked like he was wearing medieval armor that covered him from head to foot. Even his face was covered, leaving only his eyes showing. Large pieces of jagged rock jutted out of his shoulders and joints, and particularly sharp rocks protruded from his fists and feet. As he moved, the ground shook from his increased weight, but even though he couldn't run as fast, his momentum was building. The Cloud Nin behind him was yelling at him to stop and get his ass back there. Hinata had an idea pop into her head like light bulb. She jumped in front of a startled Naruto, right in the path of the charging wall of rock. "Hinata-chan, what are you doing?" Hinata looked over her shoulder at Naruto. Her Byakugan was activated. "Use your Rasengan." Naruto frowned, looking at the closing figure of stone. "I don't even think a Rasengan will stop that." Hinata smiled. "I just need you to stop him from crushing us and my arms. I can get through that armor." Naruto smiled and nodded, instantly catching on. As one they began to gather and spin chakra into their palms. Hinata had to get the angle perfect for her plan to work. It had only been a couple of seconds since the stone Nin began to charge. Another second, and he was going to crush him. Right when he was on top of them, Naruto screamed Rasengan and slammed it into the stone Nin's armored chest, just above Hinata's head. It wasn't getting through, but it had definitely stopped him in his tracks. The stone Nin grunted in surprise as the Rasengan began to dig in and tear up the outer layer of his armor. Hinata slammed both her palms into the chest of the armored stone Nin and screamed Juken arrows. The stone Nin's eyes widened in surprise, and he paused as spasms ran through his body. He fell to his knees, his armor crumbling off of him as he spat up blood and collapsed unconscious. The Cloud Nin smiled. "Idiot. Oh well, I can handle both of you anyway. I know I can beat you in close quarters." Prepared to receive as ass-kicking, she then took a step forward and paused as a spasm ran through her body. Hinata and Naruto smiled. "Nice shot, Hinata-chan. 2 birds with 1 stone, awesome." The Cloud Nin had enough time to look up in surprise as she too spat up blood and passed out. Winners! Naruto and Hinata! Hinata and Naruto and Hinata hugged, Naruto picking her up and twirling her around. Kakashi couldn't help smile at the sight.